Hello there and welcome to AM Prime on WESN Content Capital. I'm Keaton Shaw. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you had a good weekend and I hope that the rains yesterday proved, relaxing for you and nothing more. Anyway, as we get into the conversations this morning, we're focusing on the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and their operations all around. And this conversation also comes following the announcement by the Minister of National Security. Well, not an announcement, but a written response to a question asked in Parliament in regards to the rate of detection, which has now been stated at 18% for this year. Over 10,000 serious crimes being committed, including murder, rape, incest, and burglaries. TTPS only has an 18% detection rate. But that's not also the core of the discussion this morning. It also follows the news last week. A news article suggesting that the TTPS were involved in a truce between the Rasta City gang and the Six gang along the east-west corridor. That has been refuted by the TTPS, but there are a lot to remain in regards to the operations, the responsibilities of the TTPS. So I'm joined this morning by an individual whom I'm welcoming again, following what I thought was a rather fruitful and expansive conversation the last time. Mr. Darius Figueroa is with us via Zoom. Hello, sir. Welcome to the program.
Morning. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for joining me this morning, sir. It's an absolute pleasure. According to Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, police cannot and should not get involved in negotiating a truce among warring gangs believed to be responsible for the wave of serious criminal activity here in TNT. Now, in regards to TTPS operations and in trying to deal with this situation, is there any room at all, given all that we've seen and based off of your research and experience, that we should not be taking negotiations off the table at all?
Well, the first thing we must understand is that we have to put the reality, the terrain of criminality in Trinidad and Tobago into context. And that is what we fail to do when we speak about criminal activity in Trinidad and Tobago. We love to talk about gang, but we refuse to speak publicly to the fact that we are speaking of organized crime. And when you get local organized crime that is affiliated to transnational organized crime, that is now a branch of transnational organized crime operating in Trinidad and Tobago. So not all gangs are the same, just as not all trees in a forest are of the same species. So therefore you have to have a diverse strategy of engagement when you are dealing with local organized crime and transnational organized crime represented in Trinidad and Tobago by its local organized crime arm. So when you speak of the detection rate in Trinidad and Tobago, you see a wide disparity in detection between violence, between persons who are known to each other, persons in relationships, social relationships, domestic relationships. They are easily solved. But when criminal acts appear out of organized crime, an organized crime that is affiliated to transnational organized crime, you have a serious problem with detection. And this is not a Trinidad and Tobago problem. It is a world problem. Because these organizations are so disciplined that the state has to have its act in order. If you want to engage with these organizations and dismantle them. So you must have the entire range of resources, technological and human, available. But in Trinidad and Tobago, we continue to drag with the forensic sciences. this forensic sciences infrastructure in Trinidad and Tobago is woefully inadequate for the threat posed by organized and transnational organized crime. And that is why the detection rate is so low. Because what you have to understand, cases have to be built upon either forensic evidence and human witnesses who will give statements and then testify in a court of law. And organized crime and transnational organized crime has a series of measures that they constantly update to unleash upon this counter assailant, because it's a game that is being played. So they're constantly coming up with countermeasures to ensure that you do not get your witnesses. Your witnesses do not, and then when you have a justice system that is constipated, witnesses are easily persuaded to shut their mouth.
Mr. Figueroa, if all these things, what you're suggesting, and this is not obviously not the first time I'm hearing this, but if what you are stating this morning is becoming more so music to our ears, the issues with the system all round, why do you suppose there's any lack of energy, rather a lethargic attitude or approach to dealing with the situation? If we know what the issues are, what about the response in terms of solving such issues?
Well, we have two countervailing realities that impact this. One, the politicians want the TTPS to be an agency of social control. And social control is an old colonial instrument that was handed down to us, and we held on to it since the 31st of August 1962, and we're not giving up on it at all. But in other jurisdictions, the evidence is that when you have a policing agency that is blinded by its need for social control, it creates spaces in which transnational organized crime becomes lodged and embedded. And they drive now indigenous organized crime. And they establish this entire culture of gangland, which becomes very, very, very difficult for you to create cases and to prosecute successfully. So if you are not constantly changing your game to adapt and to suit the terrain, and worse yet, if you are not impacting the terrain to bring about changes in the groups that you are targeting, then you're spinning top in mud. You're just shadow boxing. So what we have been doing in Trinidad and Tobago is shadow boxing.
So in terms of this gangland culture that you speak of, that's a product of the state institutions and systems that have remained for the last 60-odd years?
But what is happening is that it is a dynamic power relation between transnational organized crime and the state. And if the state constantly is in denial and does not want to understand the very nature of the threat, then it will never prepare itself to face the threat. And that is why the organs of the state that are supposed to be at the leading edge of the engagement with transnational organized crime are so woefully inadequate in Trinidad and Tobago.
Do we have the intelligence? Do we have the intelligence to deal with transnational organized crime in TNT?
Well, the intelligence to deal with it, that is another story by itself, because the intelligence agency we have under law is a political football, because as you change regimes, everybody in command and who gets right down through the ranks in this agency gets licked out and a new set come in, and then when the next set comes back in, that set gets licked out and a new set come back in. So that agency is perpetually in a state of flux, and has lost the battle with transnational organized crime. You cannot have a politicized intelligence agency looking to engage with transnational organized crime.
Now, moving forward, you said that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is an avenue for social control, which we actually gained following independence in 1962, and we've just kept it that way. It has not evolved. If that be the case in regards to social control, is it any surprise that there were suggestions, again, suggestions have been completely refuted by the TTPS, is it any surprise, though, that there were suggestions that the TTPS were pivotal in any negotiations between gangs? Even the Prime Minister saying that how the police will speak to anyone, they're authorized to speak to anyone, and judgment is judgment for the police.
What we must recognize, it was a third-party report in the media that spoke about TTPS personnel being involved with the negotiation of a truce in gangland. Right? It was a third-party report. So therefore, the veracity of the report immediately arises. So let me talk about the operational reality. If you insist that the role of the TTPS is to sit down and to make peace, you are insisting, therefore, that TTPS is an organ of social control. Because if you are willing to sit down and make peace between warring factions of organized crime, that means you are looking to include the dons that you have negotiated with into the web of state patronage. So therefore, you are looking now to have them co-opted into a political structure by which you will politically influence them to keep the peace, because it is good politics for you. And that is the Jamaican model that has failed dismally. It has failed Jamaica, and it has failed Jamaica until today. So that is the danger of taking social control into the realm of transnational organized crime and its organized crime affiliates in Trinidad and Tobago, where you are now, if you feel that is the role of the TTPS, you are looking now to go to bed with transnational organized crime and its affiliates.
Okay, so then, Mr. Figueira, then precisely what is the role of the TTPS then?
The TTPS's role in a 21st century democracy is the policing of law, the rule of law. Their role under the Constitution is policing the rule of law without fear or favor. In Trinidad and Tobago, that is not the reality. Social control policing only concentrates on the low-hanging fruit in specific marginalized spaces. So they don't run down and lock up big shots.
What you are suggesting, because here's, I know, going back to what I said, and that last time that you used there, they don't lock up big shots, because the week before that third-party article, and you're very right to raise that point, was published for the public to become aware of, the week before, just a couple days before, heard in the news that the TTPS actually, they detained suspected gang members, including gang bosses or gang leaders, right? I think it was about 15 of them, if I'm not mistaken, a couple days before this article was published. Then you're hearing in the article that there's some truce. As you said, third party, fair enough, so the veracity of the report comes into question. And then following that, what is the status of these individuals who were detained? The point I'm making, Mr. Figueira, is you've said that they don't lock up big shots. I accept that, but the thing is, they don't even lock up individuals whom are even portraying themselves publicly as members of gangs. It's on social media, and that has been used as evidence before. So me sitting in this position, I myself am completely confused.
Well, you see, what happens if you must engage with organized crime and transnational organized crime. There are multiple avenues to dismantle an organized crime group. And these multiple avenues must be walked simultaneously. If you decide that you are intervening into a gang war, the fact of the matter is you go and you pick up people and you carry them to police stations and things like that. No one was arrested and charged, placed before a magistrate on an offense that will involve a success that would involve charges that, if successfully prosecuted, you will dismantle that organization. That speaks to the strategy being applied, or if you don't have the necessary evidence to do it. So it's one out of the other. The strategy being applied, or the fact of the matter is you cannot move to dismantle because you don't have the necessary evidence. Because remember, you pick up dons, you charge dons, dons will sit down in the remand yard for years because of this constipated judiciary. And whilst these dons are in the remand yard, it belongs to them, it already belongs to them who are inside.
Mr. Figueroa, listen, is it also something to do with the possibility that gangs have also created some form of unemployment, that gangs in itself is an informal economy, and that is why there's some level of not wanting to interfere with it, because we might disrupt people from actually living? I'm not making excuses, I'm not making justifications, but I'm just trying to find different avenues this morning in terms of answers.
Well, what we have to understand is that a disciplined organized crime group, and the most disciplined are those who are under the supervision and discipline of a transnational organized crime group. You don't dismantle that today for tomorrow. That is hard work. And the work is very hard in cultivating witnesses. And we have a judicial system in Trinidad and Tobago that is aiding and abetting the continued insularity and impunity of gangland. Because when you are a witness and you are out there on a limb for years waiting for that case to start, that is simply not feasible when you are engaging with organized crime with an intent to dismantle. And then when you have dons and captains incarcerated in Trinidad, the remand yard of Trinidad and Tobago, that is like freedom, but behind a gate. So we have two institutions that are not working to the benefit of dismantling the threat: the prison service and the judiciary. And both of them need immediate measures of reform to make them fit for purpose in this war. Do not keep expecting the TTPS to work miracles.
And I think that's a crucial point as well, Mr. Figueroa. That's an absolutely important point as well. In the context of the conversation and how you've expanded it this morning, I think certainly that is probably one of the most pertinent points. But we're going to have to pause there. I welcomed you about 2 weeks ago for a conversation. You've been on again, and I can say it leads to a wider discussion to come. So thank you for your time this morning, and I look forward to part 3 of this ongoing conversational series that we're having. Thank you very much, Mr. Figueroa.
I look forward to it too. Thank you, sir.
Have a good one.
You too.
Mr. Darius Figueroa joining me on AM Prime this morning, and again, it leads into part 3 of a conversation. We started part 1 a couple of weeks ago. Today, focusing on, well, a term, the thin blue line, refers to the police service and their operations. Not pointing out about the TTPS not working miracles. Fair. I completely understand that. I get that. But even with what they have, are they using it to their best? Are they using it efficiently or effectively? Now, he's broadened the discussion to a wider issue in regards to transnational organized crime. Focused a lot on that this morning, and that'll be the subject of a conversation to come in the near future. We'll be right back after this.
Politics? What is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Simon's Musical Supplies Limited. We are the specialist in new and used musical instruments, carrying top brands like Yamaha, Pearl River pianos, vinyl and Sabian cymbals, Remo and Evans drumheads and Fender guitars, just to name a few. Also a wide assortment of music books, pan and accessories. At Simon's, we service what we sell. Trust the leader. Call us now at 625-6412 or visit us at 20 Board Street, Port of Spain.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best.
I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation,
I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. On December 10th, 2023, at the Queen's Park Savannah, Project 600 will host a public march and rally and expressing the frustrations of crime and criminal activity in TNT. Now, a lot more is to be said about such, and I'm joined by the chairman of the Project 600 committee, Mr. Issa Mohammed, this morning, and he is with me in studio. Hello, sir. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, and good morning to yourself and all of your viewers.
Well, thank you very much for joining me. The Project 600 committee, let's begin there by asking how was this formulated? In fact, what does even Project 600 refer to? So the whole idea behind Project 600, it's something that came up with myself, my friends, my family, as a desire to take some sort of action against what we see as the biggest challenge facing society in Trinidad and Tobago today, which is the crime situation. Now, we know that crime has been bad for a long, long time, but we feel that, I think everyone feels that this time it's sort of different. As in, when we were kids in the 90s, at least myself, there was a sort of at least an undercurrent of optimism that things are going well in the country, and maybe that prosperity that we had in the country would translate into security in the long term, that things would trend to get better over time. Looking back on it now, it seems that maybe that was a bit of a fool's hope, because things have in fact progressively got worse. And now we have to face this reality that perhaps there is no light at the end of that tunnel, and that things will just continue to go from worse to worse as we see the tentacles of criminality spread into our institutions. And so the very institutions that are charged with getting this thing under control, they now seem to be falling victim to the disease, as it were, of crime. So we're looking at a situation where it seems less and less that things are going to get better. And when we look at those in society that are tasked with getting this thing or keeping it on track or fighting against it, we find that
the responses that we're seeing, they don't seem to be meeting the challenge in the way that it needs to be met. And there's a politicization of everything in Trinidad and Tobago, and I think that's making things worse. Now, we feel that we as citizens need to speak out about this. We need to take action against it. But it needs there needs to be an avenue outside of the politics to deal with that. Because we're looking at our leaders and those who particularly are involved in the criminal justice system. And we see the Prime Minister, the leader of the opposition, the former Commissioner of Police. We even see the DPP. We see the Chief Justice. We see all of these figures who are there to guide us forward. And from my position as a young person in this country, there's just too much bickering. There's too much fighting. There's too much, quote unquote, politics. And I felt as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, we need to come together as part of our civic responsibility. Sometimes we forget the role that we play as citizens. As part of our civic responsibility, when we see things are going awry, we need to speak up about it.
The optimism that you mentioned that you would have had as a child, because crime has always been a thing. Crime has always been something that has plagued TNT, but as you mentioned, it's getting worse and worse. I know you said that such optimism has faded, but isn't it that optimism in itself that has led to the formation of the Project 600 committee, based off of what you said, it's its purpose, and the events due to take place on December 10th?
Absolutely. I mean, you always have to believe that you have agency in a situation. Now, we're not the regular citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, myself, we're not in positions of big influence. We can't directly, affect things in a way that to say we could fix it with our hands. But we do have agency and we have a voice. One of the things that we're grateful and lucky to have in Trinidad and Tobago is freedom of expression. And so we have a sphere of influence. What are the things that are within our capability to do? Within our sphere of influence is the ability to raise our voices. And so there's a duty to practice those things that are within our sphere of influence. We can't, make broad sweeping changes. We can't instruct. I don't even think we could instruct people what to do. We don't have access to all the information and all the intelligence about all the research and all the data about the crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago. What we do have is our feelings about it. And we as individuals care for ourselves, our friends, our family, our kids. For me personally, it was about my kids. And to say they have to inherit this, what we put together. We are the ones who are in running things in Trinidad and Tobago today. Long term, we don't have to live with these decisions. Our children have to live with these decisions. Decisions that are being made by persons in authority right now will affect our kids more than it will ever affect us.
Why do you suppose that this is an appropriate avenue? TNT has had multiple movements, multiple marches, rallies, expressing their frustrations, even against criminal activity and crime, and even the operations of institutions within the state. So why do you suppose that this is, or would be rather, an effective move on the part of the committee?
So firstly, this is for us, right? We all have a need to express solidarity and to show support and to empathize with each other. One of the stated objectives of Project 600 is to show solidarity with the victims of crime. So we're asking for 600 volunteers to carry 600 flags into the Queen's Park Savannah, each flag representing someone who would have lost their life to homicide over the past year. And so this is where the number 600 comes from. Approximately 600 homicides last year. We're heading towards a similar number this year. So number one is to show that solidarity with those who have lost. We all feel the hurt inside because it has seeped into our day-to-day lives. All of us, if we're not victims of crime, each of us knows somebody who is a victim of crime. So we need to express that solidarity with each other to show people that we're not crazy, we're not alone in terms of how we feel. That's point number one. Now, point number two is that you say we've had marches, you say it's been tried before. My personal opinion, it's probably not been tried enough, and we've had too little of these marches. The last big march I could remember, the last big march against crime that I could remember would have been the death march by the Keith Noel 136 committee, Stephen Cadies. Everybody talks about that. When I bring up Project 600, people say Keith Noel 136. That was 18 years ago. 18 years ago. And people still bring up that one. It's been 18 years. We should have had one every year. We should have had one every 6 months. Look at where the crime situation is going. We are not acting enough. We look to France, where they tried to raise the retirement age by what, 2 years? And the entire country went into uproar. We need to take back that control into our hands. But I think part of it is the politicization. So everything has become polarized and politicized. So whoever is in power, their support base never wants to take action for anything. When one party is in power, their support base will not take action. When the other party is in power, their support base will not take any action, because any action is seen to be supporting the opposite political faction. We need to depoliticize the situation. And very importantly, I want you to hear this. The political leaders sometimes do not have room to maneuver. Even within your party, there are voices, and there are extreme voices within your party calling you to behave a certain way. And sometimes I empathize with our leaders, and I think they need an avenue to take us to a more common approach. If our political leaders need to soften their positions right now, as we hear the public spat taking place, if they need to soften their positions right now, then maybe thousands of people in the savannah marching to crime will give them that room that they need to maneuver within their organizations to soften their positions and say, what, you know what, guys, I know you all don't want to compromise on this here point, but look, there are people in the savannah. And maybe we need to soften this a little bit and come to a common consensus.
Now, bear with me here for a bit, because I understand that you said that part of this is largely due to civic responsibility. There is also that concern for the next generations or generations to come. I understand that. But how society thinks, how society reacts, may not necessarily be as empathetic as you've described yourself to be, or empathetic for me understanding where you are coming from. The first reaction that many people in society are going to be is, this is also a political march. This is something that is against all efforts currently being undertaken. People will label this committee and yourself that way. And how do you intend to respond to that?
The whole objective of this exercise is to provide an avenue outside of politics for people to express how they feel. And so we are appealing to all citizens, regardless of their political affiliations, to say that crime is something bigger than all of us. It's bigger than the politics, it's bigger than the parties, and it's something we need to come together on. I think especially in the current environment of the discussions taking place politically right now, I think the average citizen feels really that we need more compromise. And what we are trying to do is to help those who are in power right now, give them some ammunition that they are able to do better. Because when you don't have people in the streets, you sort of, as they say famously, they ain't riot yet. No, we want our authorities to do better, And so we are showing that we as the people need them to do better. If we were talking political action, it would be along the lines of, well, you're not doing this and you need to do this. You're not doing that and you need to do that. You can't do it, we need this other person here to do it. And we are adopting none of those positions. We are saying, we as the people, asking those who have influence, and not just in government, but also in opposition, and also anybody who has influence on the entire criminal justice system, even in advisory capacities, in legal capacities, in the justice system, even in the social system, because there is a huge socio-economic component of what's going on here. And we're calling for everyone to work together to move this thing forward. And there's no political advantage or gain or anything to be gotten by us, the citizens, from that call.
How long has the Project 600 committee been in operation? How long has it existed?
Must have been a month, because this was something that came up very suddenly. And I'll tell you a little bit about the thought process, right? We keep saying, we have these conversations, myself, my family, my mom, my sisters, my wife, and everybody's concerned about crime. It's something that has dominated national conversation for the longest time. And we're saying, oh, we wish somebody would do something, that there's a way that we could, there's a way that we could express how we feel about the situation. And, you know, we call it, we said, you know what we need in this country? We need a cry day. Right? This is what we said. We're going to have cry day, like a Friday cry day, where people should just go into the savannah and cry, because this is how we feel, man. We're just in tears about what's happening, and friends migrating, and neighbors being broken into, and myself, all of us are victims of crime. We were victims of crime several times, right? And we just felt that we need to just get together and have a cry out, right? Because it's just this overwhelming way that we feel. It's oppressive. It's weighing down on everything. It's weighing down on society. There's a collective trauma for being the 6th most homicidal country on earth. There's a psychological impact on our society. I don't think we understand how much this is affecting psychologically, this collective national trauma. Our kids constantly overhearing conversations about this one was broken into and that one was shot. And then the videos on social media, and you're seeing it in front of your eyes, and our kids are exposed to these things, and they listen to news and they hear it. And it's sinking down deep inside them that this here is all that's for them, and it's wrong. So we had these conversations, and there was a point where we said, you know what? No one is doing it. So let's do it. And this was just in September. And so very quickly we said, you know what, no one is doing it, let's do it. Let's call a non-political rally into Port of Spain for the citizens to come together and share how they feel about what's going on.
What has the response been like thus far in the 600 volunteers?
It's been amazing, and it's been concerning. And I'll say that because we have the both sides. As you said, first and foremost, there are all those people who say, yes, this is what we need. We need this right now. The country needs this. We're with you 100%. We have so many people just organizing groups and groups and groups to go down. So many, I've been contacted by so many friends I haven't heard from in years. What can I do? Just tell me, how can I help? It's been fantastic, right? But then there's the other group that say, oh, what are you guys going to accomplish? This is just politics in another name. Or it's Keith Noel, Stephen Cadiz, all over again, been there, done that. December 11th, nothing's going to change, right? So we've had both, and to that I say, listen, December 11th, you know what's going to be different? That all of us who went down there, we would have done something. Right? And there are those who say, well, this is a waste of time. Well, quite frankly, sitting down on your couch and watching Netflix is a waste of time too.
Yikes. That's what I did this weekend. But anyway, again, I understand what you're saying, but it's not going to happen overnight. So December 11th, things obviously will still be the same. It's nothing going to happen overnight. So what does this mean for the long-term operations of the Project 600 committee? Or the long-term activism?
We have this other part of it about non-violent conflict resolution, right? That we need to start a discussion on non-violent conflict resolution in the country, because violence can't be the answer to all of these problems. And we have problems, and right now violence is being chosen. We like to say we're not marching against any one type of crime. We're marching against all crimes. All crimes. What they say, blue collar, white collar, what have you. It's all crime, it's all criminal activity. Yes, we're giving special emphasis to the victims of murder, because I would like to suggest that they are the ones who have been most affected. That particular crime is the worst, right? But we're highlighting all crimes, and we're talking about non-violent conflict resolution, and we want to start a national discussion on it. That's number one. And number two, to your point, we want to normalize a culture of activism. We want to get to the point where we could have these marches and have them regularly when something is going wrong in the country. We used to do it, you know. Trinidad used to be a place where go back in the history, water riots, Butler, so many, right? We have a long history of this thing. And for some reason, in recent decades, we've turned our backs on that history of protest and march and civic action, and I am calling it civic responsibility.
Has frustration and disappointment led to acceptance?
Obviously. So I'm not criticizing anybody for adopting that position, because this has been our history. It's happened decade after decade that there has been inaction, and no results, right? There's a point to be made here that we can't give up on fighting for what we want. We have to keep at it until things get better. And sometimes there are small improvements that we don't see.
Mr. Mohammed, before we say goodbye, and thank you for your time this morning and for explaining all of this actually for the viewing public to have a better understanding. On a different note, related to crime, related to TNT, but not necessarily the march, I'm curious to know, you mentioned that you have children, and I'm sure that you may have nieces or nephews, and even the friends or individuals who are a part of the committee and colleagues, whatever the case may be, they have children, of course.
Yeah.
If this is something that continues, do you see a future for generations to come in TNT? Do you see TNT being a place that you would encourage future generations to stay within, to live in, to work for?
Listen, I think Trinidad and Tobago is the most beautiful place on earth. And it has nothing to do with the natural beauty, which we have tons of as well. But it has, to me, it has to do with the fact that we're living in a country where you could have a church, a mosque, and a temple sharing the same compound, sharing the same car park, and everybody goes by everybody's house on their festival and eats their food. Look, me, I went to a Hindu primary school, a Catholic secondary school, and I'm a Muslim, right? There is no way where on earth where you have these sorts of stories taking place. And I think it's what makes our country beautiful. It's what makes our people the most beautiful people on earth. Listen, Trinidad and Tobago may never have been great, but man, it was sweet. Once upon a time, it was real sweet.
Personally, I still believe it is.
And I'm saying that. I'm saying that. We have everything to live for. We have everything to fight for. We have the potential in this country to be the sweetest place on earth, and I 100% believe that. So is it worth it? Is it worth fighting for? Is there a future? Absolutely, man. This is God's place, man. We do have paradise right here, but we have a responsibility to take care of it. And this is what we're doing by these actions. We have to take this here paradise that God gave us, and we have to do our responsibility as His agents here on earth to take care of this place and keep it well. He made it for us, but we have to keep it.
Should people want more information or even to volunteer to be one of those carrying the 600 flags, whom can they contact? How do they get in contact with the committee?
The website is project600tt.com. There are links there. There's the WhatsApp number, the WhatsApp group, email. We are on Facebook. We are on TikTok. We are on Instagram. Just search Project 600, Project 600TT. The website project600tt.com. All of the information that you need is on those social media platforms.
Mr. Mohammed, thank you very much, and to the rest of the committee members, all the very best on December 10th and the events leading up to December 10th, of course. And following December 10th, the future of activism, another conversation that we are due to have.
Thank you so very much. Glad to be on your program, and I appreciate the time to share this message with your viewers.
Thank you very much, sir. All the best. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a quick break on the program.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokaram, on WhatsApp Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
WhatsApp Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN Content Capital.
My name is Carl Media, and I'm the founder and the host of Ever Increasing Voice Ministries. Join me every Saturday and Sunday on WESN, this powerful station, at 9 a.m. on Saturdays, 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. nightly. Also on Sundays, I'll be on at 7 a.m., 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. at night time. When you come here, we are getting people heavenly ready.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. We're shifting focus this morning on to healthcare here in TNT. In fact, and let me read this for you, not only do kidney stones negatively affect a patient's quality of life, but TNT citizens of East Indian descent are more likely to develop the condition. And this is according to one of 3 studies done locally within the last 3 years by a team led by Dr. Satyendra Prasad, Dr. Arista Maharaj, and colleagues from the University of the West Indies. Well, Dr. Satyendra Prasad, urologist and lecturer of urology in the University of the West Indies, is with us via Zoom this morning. Good morning, Dr. Prasad, and welcome to the program.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you very much for joining us on the program. The results of these 3 studies, does it confirm trends noticed in the past, or is this a new results that are only just being recognized?
So we have, one of the reasons we ended up doing these studies is because we had very little data on kidney stones locally. So we could tell you, I mean, in San Fernando, at least the incidence of kidney stones is so high. We see kidney stones, 2 things we see: kidney stones and prostate cancer. And we've seen kidney stones causing, morbidity, causing people to be sick, to be unwell, even die, in the past. And that's shocking for such a common condition that is an unrecognized public health problem. We had very little data. So last year we kind of set about really investigating the issue. So we did a number of studies. One looked at the cost of kidney stones to the RHA. The other looked at the incidence, which we never had before, well, the prevalence, how common it is locally, and then the other looked at the quality of life among stone formers. So those 3 studies just the beginning of our kidney stone research. I mean, there have been 1 or 2 smaller studies done locally, but I think these 3 together have been some of the best data we've had so far on kidney stones.
Just to clarify, exactly how were the studies conducted? I know you mentioned exactly where, but this study itself, how was it conducted?
So the incident study was done nationally. So we sent out communication on social media, generally on the internet. So it was a self-reported study. So there are 2 ways you could do this. You could grab a bunch of people and you can scan them and see how many of them have kidney stones. That's a little bit difficult to do ethically right now with the resources. So it's a self-reported study done nationally. The economic study was done only at San Fernando Hospital, where each patient basically received an itemized bill for the patient didn't actually get a bill. We created essentially amongst an itemized bill for every patient that came through the door with kidney stones, both as in and out patients. And then we worked with the costing department to see what that cost the RHA. And then the quality of life study was also done nationally. Primarily in South, but also done nationally, where we looked at patients with kidney stones and patients without kidney stones. And we used a validated quality of life questionnaire designed specifically for kidney stones. And we looked at these patients without kidney stones and with kidney stones, and the people with kidney stones had worse quality of life across all the domains: physical, emotional, vitality, everything. And then we took it further. We said, hey, when we treat your stones, does your quality of life improve? And we looked at people before surgery and then 1 month after surgery, where we cleared their stones. Quality of life improved markedly.
Mm-hmm. Now, from the studies conducted, what were some of the findings beyond the one that we've spoken about thus far in regards to TNT citizens of East Indian descent being primarily affected? What about those male or female? What about age groups that are more likely to form kidney stones?
Well, the average age group we found was in the mid-50s. The average age for the stone formers, mid-50s. We kind of matched those with the controls. There were other things. Location did not stand out as a risk factor, meaning if you're from Chaguanas or if you're from Arima or if you're from Port of Spain or San Fernando, that was not associated with it. Race was associated with kidney stones. Whether you have a family member, both immediate and extended, that was associated with it. Gout, which we know can cause your uric acid levels to be high, so you can get kidney stones. And diabetes, which we know is a risk factor. So those things were kind of confirmed in our study. It was a study of 1,225 people that responded overall.
Mm-hmm. Usually, who has poorer outcomes, males or females, younger or older?
Poorer outcome, you mean poorer quality of life?
Yes.
Tends to be among females, Overall, the stone formers have a much worse quality of life. but the quality of life difference is more marked in females, and we don't exactly know why that is. Is it that females tend to verbalize it more? We don't know. But what we found was that the difference in quality of life tend to be more in females.
Is there any explanation as to why it is TNT citizens of East Indian descent are more likely to be affected?
It might just be genetic, and this is part of the problem. Like, we really need to, we've established a little bit of a research group at the university where in the next few years, we're just going to be focusing primarily on kidney stones, looking at, okay, so we know the incidence, we know the economics, we know there's a problem. I'm trying to get people to recognize that problem and throw some more money at it. So we need more research. So throw some more resources at it. So we need more resources, we need more research. We need more investment in kidney stones. We need people to recognize that this is a problem. As much as diabetes and other non-communicable diseases are a problem, kidney stones cause you pain, they cause morbidity, you can die, you lose time off from work. But coming back to your question, it might be multifactorial, it might be genetics, we're going to look into that, it might be diet. Who knows what we're going to find.
Now, could kidney stones actually cause you to lose a kidney or both kidneys?
Absolutely, 100%. If a stone, we see it all the time, if a stone comes down from the kidney and blocks the tube that leads from the kidney to the bladder, which is called the ureter, it can cause pain, bleeding. Patients can potentially lose a kidney if the obstruction is long enough. You have about a 6-week window before you could potentially lose that kidney. So that's why it's important, if you have kidney stones and you get treated, follow up. Make sure you have a CT scan. Make sure that stone is really gone. Because we've seen kidneys die silently. You get pain, the kidney goes away, and then the kidney just dies.
That is rather incredible that it's just about a 6-week window. That's not a lot of time at all.
It's not. Seems like a lot, but it's not.
It's not a lot of time at all. But basic questions, just so that there's an understanding, in regards to exactly what causes the formation of kidney stones? What leads to the formation of kidney stones?
So again, multiple things. We have the influence of genetics, we have the influence of environment, which is, things like diet. So the kidney stone diet, if you had kidney stones, you want a diet, more fluids. The more fluids you take, the more dilute your urine is. We have two factors at play here. The solute, which is like calcium, and the solvent, which is your water. If you have too much solute, like too much calcium in your urine, and too little water, it's going to precipitate out and form stones. So you want to have very dilute urine. You want to use less salt, right? So this calcium is excreted in urine with sodium. So the less salt you use, the less likely you are to form stones. You want to have fruits and vegetables to increase your citrate content. And this is very important. For the average stone former, you do not want to avoid milk and cheese and other dairy products. This is a common problem we see. Patients are told, stop milk, stop cheese, stop all dairy, stop calcium intake. You want to have normal amounts of calcium in your diet, both from dairy and non-dairy sources. The less calcium you intake, the higher risk of stone recurrences. But if I had to give you advice, the most important thing is stay hydrated. We see this all the time. This is why sometimes these things are seasonal in more temperate countries. When it's hot, people become dehydrated and you get more stone formation. It's very simple. Keep your urine dilute. Well, and there are medical conditions as well where you push a lot of these things out into the, like, problems with the glands in your neck, hyperparathyroidism, where you push calcium into the urine. So these things are all risk factors of stone formation. As I said, genetics.
Well, I think you've also hit quite the nail on the head there. That would explain a lot. Generally speaking, all around, our diet in TNT is high in salt content, high in sugar content. Yes. People don't drink enough water, and drinking a sip of water a day is not enough water, and that's a huge problem.
And your incidence of kidney stones, 50% recurrence. So there's a 50% rate of recurrence with kidney stones within 5 to 10 years. It makes me very happy when I see people come in with a big bottle of water at their appointments. That they've recognized that they need to stay hydrated. Okay, we've made this mistake once, let's not do it again. And they stay hydrated. They're always walking around with water.
Well, I can hope, Dr. Prasad, that they drink the water after the appointment as well. But certainly, you've hit a huge nail on the head there. And that recurrence rate, that in itself is incredible. Apart from the 6-week window, now you're suggesting that there's a 50%, not suggesting, you're stating, there's a 50% recurrent rate.
Yeah, once a stone former, essentially always a stone former, unless you make those changes.
Wow. Moving forward now, in regards to, because you mentioned at the beginning of the interview, the fatality of kidney stones. How does an individual succumb to kidney stones?
So when you have a big diabetic population and a population with kidney stones, you create the perfect storm for the loss of a kidney. So you have these people with poor kidney function to begin with because they have diabetes, they have high blood pressure, they're obese. Then you have a high incidence of kidney stones for whatever reason locally. You have a kidney that's obstructed in a diabetic. If you think about it, that's essentially an abscess. It gets infected, you could potentially end up with a massive life-threatening infection, or your kidney, an already compromised kidney, could die off in a few weeks. And you never know. And then they come 10 years later with impaired kidney function. You do a CT scan, you see a kidney that's massively dilated from a stone, and they've lost that kidney. So we have a high incidence of NCDs, and we have a high incidence of kidney stones. Compromised kidney function already, and kidney becomes obstructed, you're asking for problems.
Dr. Prasad, what does medical intervention entail, from the most basic steps or the first steps to be taken to the most serious interventions?
So that's a very good question. The most basic steps is diet. Like we said, lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, lots of fluids, less salt, less meat, right? You don't have to stop meat again, and by meat we mean anything with a face, including fish, right? So dietary intervention. Then we have basic medication that we could put you on. If you're passing a stone or you're the appropriate person for medication, meaning your stone is under 1 centimeter, your pain has settled down and so on, we can put you on medication to help you pass that stone. Some of the medication as well, some stones are amenable to dissolution, meaning we can give you medication to help you melt those stones. There are a lot of over-the-counter things like cystone or Roatinix that don't necessarily work very well, but they're very popular because nobody wants surgery. And then after, or if medical treatment does not work and you don't pass that stone, or the stone is too big in the first place, luckily, even in the public sector, we have very good treatments available for, sometimes under-resourced, but treatments available for kidney stones. You have lasers that can break the stones up. At San Fernando Hospital, it's the only public hospital with a shockwave lithotripter that we can put on your tummy and break the stone up without actually needing surgery. And we have percutaneous surgery. We no longer, I haven't done an open stone surgery for years, where you actually cut that patient to take the stone out. In fact, we've gotten, at least I've gotten my stone surgery size down now to about 4 or 5 millimeters, even for the big stones, the cut that we make on the side. And that's called PCNL. We make a little cut on the side, we pass some instruments into the kidney, and we laser that stone out, even for big stones. And sometimes you have to combine these treatments because we see massive stones that one treatment might not work. You have to combine these treatments. You have to combine ureteroscopy, which is going up from below with a laser. You have to combine that with PCNL, which is making the small hole and trying to break the stone up that way. Or sometimes you have to combine PCNL with shockwave lithotripsy. He says really, you have to really, each stone is different. So I love about stone surgery. Each stone is different and each patient is different. You really have to sit with that patient, look at the CT, and kind of decide which treatment is best for them.
Based off of this study, is there a possibility that this is a hereditary condition where, for example, if my father had it, I will most likely have it, etc.?
Yeah, people will come in the office and you ask them, and you take in the history, so you ask them about stone formation. So, yeah, my brother has stones, my dad has stones, my mom has stones. So this is the first study. So we actually found a positive correlation, as I said, with immediate and extended family members. The incidence of stones is much higher among people who have immediate family members. If your brother has it, or your sister has it, there's a good chance that you might get it as well. Knowing that, you can take preventative steps to help prevent it.
Certainly. Are there any limitations, or were there any limitations to the studies conducted?
Yeah, I mean, this, by no means, the incident study, by no means is it perfect. It's a self-reported incident. So we basically ask people, do you currently have kidney stones now? And one of the things about self-reported studies, people who have stones are more likely to respond. Right? But that's kind of offset by the fact that a lot of people have stones and don't know it. So I might have a 3-4 millimeter stone and I've never been symptomatic, so I don't know I have it. So I would not have responded. I might have responded no. So it's not a perfect study. It's just a initial study to show that we have an issue. Now what we need to do is probably do a bigger study where we actually take random people and we do ultrasounds or CT scans on them and look at the true incidence of kidney stones locally. You know, the quality of life study was very good. Is as good as a study like that can get. Is actually Dr. Arista Miraj is actually our resident. She's a urologist in training. And that is actually a world-class study that she did, where we looked at non-stone formers and stone formers using a validated questionnaire. So there are not many limitations to that one, perhaps apart from recall bias, but the incidence study is just a preliminary, hey, we have an issue here, we need to investigate it further. And it's the best data we have so far.
I also understand now, you know, why it is important to have such studies. And as you mentioned earlier, it also helps in regards to raising more awareness, but also in regard to funding as well and therapies that are useful.
This is it. You need funding. I mean, it's pointless screaming into the void, right? If we're all just talking in a bubble to each other that, hey, kidney stones are a problem among urologists, what we need are the policy makers, the people at the ministry. I've kind of been screaming at people that we need more funding for kidney stones. The thing about treatment for kidney stones is very technology dependent. You need lasers, you need baskets, you need wires, you need all these things, right? So you need a constant flow of equipment to effectively manage it. You need lithotripters, you need scopes. So you need the people who are listening, who are in the ministry and the policy makers, you need them to be listening. You know, so that's why we set about trying to raise awareness locally.
Certainly.
Nobody thinks the kidney stones are a big problem until they get a kidney stone, I guarantee you that.
Ah, yes, indeed. Now, finally, again, this is a question more out of curiosity. Does the quality of water that you consume, does that also have any effect on the formation of kidney stones?
There was one study earlier in Trinidad that might have suggested that, but the data internationally, you're talking about hard water with lots of calcium, the data internationally would suggest no, that the quality of water does not really impact the stone formation. That's a common thing that people say as well, but there's no real evidence, no hard evidence supporting that. I would rather you drink water from the pipe, hard water or not, and stay hydrated than not, you know, not drink water.
That's an important point, hydration, of course. So Dr. Prasad, thank you very much for your time this morning, and to you and the rest of the team who are a part of these studies, thank you very much for the work that you all are doing. I wish you guys all the best, and I hope for good news as it relates to future studies and even funding.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for helping us get this message out there.
Certainly, sir. Have a good day. All the best.
Take care.
Stay hydrated. It's a simple thing. Diet is absolutely important. How many interviews have we had where doctors stress the important point of diet? Healthy eating is not cheap, but it's also not difficult. It's the choices that we make. It's what we prioritize, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, let's take a quick break on the program.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole. It's for all of us in public.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. And before we end the program, let's take a look at what's happening in the region. We're starting with St. Lucia. In fact, we only have time to do St. Lucia this morning, but it's appropriate considering the conversation that we just had. The Ministry of Health expects the Health and Security Levy to generate significant revenue, which will be used to transform the health sector in St. Lucia. Let's take a look at this report.
St. Lucia's Ministry of Health officials are promoting the benefits of the 2.5% Health and Security Levy, which is expected to bring a fresh approach to the healthcare system.
The Ministry of Health, Wellness and Elderly Affairs is currently undertaking structured reform of the healthcare system in order to increase accessibility and to healthcare, and also to ensure that healthcare provided is more affordable, and ensure that persons within St. Lucia have access to a reliable healthcare system. This, of course, requires a significant input of financial resources in order to commence and sustain such an initiative. We look towards the levy to support the strengthening of the infrastructure that we currently have, as well as the service provision that we are currently undertaking.
Health officials are striving to ensure that medical emergencies do not lead to financial burdens. The government of St. Lucia is prioritizing healthcare delivery, accessibility, and affordability of public healthcare, according to Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Jenny Daniel.
We are hoping to establish our new Castries Urban Polyclinic as part of a broader Castries multipurpose healthcare facility. And of course, this requires an extensive amount of financing, as we are also hoping to extend the services we provide during this institution. We are looking to extend the physical infrastructure at Groseley Polyclinic. We are looking to extend the opening hours of the Viewfort Wellness Center and to look at the services, increasing the number of services, particularly diagnostic services that are provided at that institution. We are looking towards the reconstruction of the Larishes Wellness Center and various other infrastructural strengthening activities, as well as service enhancing activities that will be beneficial to the population.
The 2.5% Health and Security Levy, introduced by the Pierre administration, is aimed at addressing healthcare challenges and rising crime in St. Lucia, despite facing opposition from the United Workers' Party, who believe the levy will be burdensome. The Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health is praising the 2.5% levy for its potential to improve the healthcare system and provide better services to patients.
We anticipate that with the levy, it would enhance the government's ability to invest in healthcare, and we see it as really an investment for health to ensure that the country remains healthy, to improve the health profile, and to ensure that a brighter future.
The 2.5% Health and Security Levy will also power universal health coverage, which aims to enhance accessibility to public health services while preserving the finances of St. Lucians and contributing to the overall well-being of the nation.
Well, we pay our health surcharge here in TNT, but we're calling for an improvement to the health sector. If that is increased, how would we react? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, listen, the best way to avoid the hospitals is to look after yourself, live a healthy lifestyle, have a healthy diet. That's just the best way to avoid going to any public health institution, or any health institution for that fact. As we come to the end of AM Prime, I wish you guys a good day ahead. May it be a productive one, a safe one, and I wish you a good week ahead as we come to the end of November and we're heading into the month of December. The festive season certainly kicks in. We have a month again for the year of 2023. Time to do some reflection as we enter 2024. Should have started that a while ago, but nevertheless, we still have some time to make some changes. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been AM Prime on WESN Content Capital, the premier platform for Caribbean content. I'm Keaton Shaw, and I'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN.
I'm Andre L. Batiste, and you're watching WESN, the content capital.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokaram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best.
I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the Content Capital.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
We are WESN, the premier platform for Caribbean content. WESN, covering West, East, South, and North. WESN, we entertainment, sports, and news. WESN, available on Greendot 7, Amplia 118, Airlink 17, Bmobile 107, Digicel 21, ICNTT 105, and Flow 110. Connect with us at WESNCC or stream online at www.wesncc.com. WESN, your premier platform for Caribbean content.
Soldiers and police officers were arrested on suspicion of subversion. They were accused of planning attacks on the one-year anniversary of anti-government unrest that left around 30 people dead.
In India, rescuers are now digging by hand to try and reach the 41 workers who have been trapped in a collapsed road tunnel for the past 16 days. The rescue operation has been hit by repeated setbacks, as Matthew Mary Karuche reports.
Members of the Indian Army are on standby, ready for the next phase of the rescue of 41 construction workers trapped in a collapsed tunnel in northern India. For the last 2 weeks, rescuers have focused on drilling horizontally through the mountain to reach the workers. This weekend, however, they had to change tack. The drill broke down, blocking the rescue path with debris.
We removed 20 meters of the damaged machine with 25 meters to go. We expect the entire machine will be removed tomorrow morning. After that, we'll start manually removing debris.
Rescue workers will have to use handheld power tools to breach the last 10 to 15 meters of rock that the drill was unable to breach. Despite the long wait for rescue, local authorities have confirmed that the trapped workers are alive and well. This father of a 22-year-old trapped worker said the stress of the incident has spurred major life changes.
I'll never send him back to work in the tunnels. I want him to change his job and stay home. I will ask him to become a farmer or do anything else he wants to do.
The tunnel that collapsed is part of a major highway project to link northern India with China. Authorities have not said what caused the tunnel to collapse, but the region is prone to landslides, earthquakes, and floods.
We'll leave you now on a lighter note in Thailand, where monkeys were the stars of the show Sunday. The province of Lapuri held its annual Monkey Festival to try and boost local tourism.
Thailand has hosted its annual feast for thousands of monkeys, and the menu included all of their favourite treats: watermelons, oranges, mangoes and bananas, a delight for their taste buds and for the tourists.
Oh, they love the mangoes. Mangoes was their top one.
I think bananas was number 2.
Yeah.
The Monkey Banquet Festival is held every year in Lapuri, 150 kilometres north of Bangkok, in a province famed for the primates who frequent the local temples, shrines and streets. While they can be a nuisance, snatching food, drinks and clawing over tourists, they are tolerated because of their sacred heritage and lucrative benefits. The festival's founder started the event in the 80s as a way to say thank you to the hundreds of macaques that had boosted tourism and revenue in the town.
Monkeys have been here a long, long time, even before us. It's better to live with them and make compromises, because we both rely on each other. I understand that the monkeys cause trouble to the local people, but we have made efforts to sterilize some and took others away to reduce numbers.
While these cheeky monkeys may have stolen some sunglasses or two throughout the years, it's safe to say they've also stolen hearts.
You are watching France 24. Don't go away. There's a lot more to come.
Alsace wouldn't be quite the same without them. Across the Rhine plain, traditional timber-framed houses are part of the picture postcard scenery, iconic symbols threatened by the passage of time. Every year, 400 of these remarkable old houses are demolished, but a handful of Alsatians are trying to safeguard their heritage. 3 years ago in Engvillers, in the north of the Lower Rhine region, a couple embarked on a rather crazy project.
So this is going to be the stoop, the main living room.
Carole and her partner Gilles bought this 18th century farmhouse to make it their home. Despite a few misgivings, they opted for authenticity rather than a modern structure.
We were a bit prejudiced about Alsatian houses, and as a result, we assumed it was going to be dark. But when we got here, we saw there were lots of windows, so it's not so dark after all.
There are 23 of them.
So we actually really liked it. It had everything we had in mind.
Inside and out, everything needs to be restored. The couple intends to respect the codes of Alsatian architecture.
This is called the Gupti.
By using, for example, this mixture of lime and red sand for the rendering.
See? It's very liquid. You just have to throw it on.
These are ancestral materials and techniques, perfect for prolonging the life of this old building.
The house is 300 years old, and it's lasted this long because it's built from the materials they used back then. I'm not convinced that modern concrete houses will last 300 years.
Withstanding the harsh local climate, they have survived wars and disasters. The names of the men who built them can be read on the sides of these half-timbered structures.
Vous en avez de la chance, vous, les Schiller, les Hume, les Urban et les Bastien. Car la maison du trisaïeul sera aussi celle de l'arrière-petit-fils. Et vous traverserez ainsi les siècles.
It's a view that failed to take into account the wave of urbanization. Some ancestral dwellings, like this house, 4 centuries old but demolished in 2020, are disappearing forever. Other half-timbered houses, though, are being painstakingly dismantled and given refuge here, in the village of Hochfelden.
There's a whole house here. You just need to reassemble it, put the panels on and fill in the half-timbering, and you've got yourself a house.
Jérémy is an Alsatian house rescuer. He's helped out by the clues left behind by the carpenters of the day. It's a veritable construction manual.
There are markings here. They're very faint because they've been worn away by time. But here you can make out a 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Then 3 lines which shows that this is the rear facade, the half-timbering.
Rather than be discarded, these beams, some of them 300 years old, are cleaned up, measured, and then cut, before being assembled to provide the framework for other structures, like this 19th century barn.
It's also a great source of pride because we're perpetuating the work of our ancestors, which secures our heritage. So that's something we're very proud of.
barns, houses, or farmhouses, this company renovates more and more ancestral buildings every year. Traditional Alsatian houses are actually very popular with homeowners, and the old is not necessarily incompatible with the new. Carol and Gilles took a break from their renovation project to look for inspiration in the work of another couple.
So this is the house, then there's the courtyard and the outbuildings.
Yves and his partner have transformed and modernized his grandmother's house.
It's really nice. It just goes to show you really can modernize an old house.
And contrary to popular belief, renovating an old Alsatian house doesn't need to cost the earth.
We weren't sure we wanted to renovate an Alsatian house, but we soon realized that it met all the ecological criteria we were looking for. The materials are easy to install, and if you can fix them up yourself, you'll save a lot of money. And in the end, you can spend that on other things.
In the course of their work, the couple made some strange discoveries.
This is an outline we found under the window, which is actually a footprint. In fact, there's a large footprint and a smaller one. They're the signature of the people who preceded us, and for us, the discovery was like finding a real treasure.
We're just passing through. Hopefully, we're making sure that they'll endure for several centuries to come.
Like guardians of memory, these protectors of our heritage are preserving the soul of our villages, the Alsatian charm that helps attract over 20 million visitors every year.
The world is ever changing. The news doesn't wait.
France 24 gives a global perspective that an educated, intelligent, and active viewer is going to want to have to be able to fully understand the issues of the day.
That's why it will always be there to help make sense of world events.
J'ai l'habitude de suivre France 24 partout où je me trouve, et ce grâce à mon smartphone, parce que je ne reste pas souvent devant la télé.
Quand une information circule sur la toile, j'utilise l'application de France 24 pour vérifier l'authenticité.
For the best international coverage, 24 hours a day, no matter what, France 24 is with you everywhere, all the time.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.
I'm John Zarakostas and I report from Geneva for France 24 News on major developments from UN peace talks, global health and emergencies, and Swiss politics and finance.
John Zarakostas, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world.
What were your first impressions when you got to Paris?
Alors, c'est vraiment impressionnant parce que
it was really impressive. The setting, the atmosphere, the smells, even the lights were different. It was really just so wonderful. I got a great welcome. I had a great stay and I really don't regret going. I absolutely loved my time in Paris.
Je kiffe mon séjour. Ouais.
Togolese model Alex Seff is walking in Paris on the occasion of the first ever foreign edition of FIMO, that is Togo's International Fashion Festival, which celebrated its 10th birthday in Lomé in the spring.
Jacques, where did you get the idea to relocate FIMO to Paris?
À Paris. We thought after 10 years of FIMO that it was time to send Togolese fashion, African fashion, out into all the capital cities of the world, starting with Paris.
You're also a designer. What are the biggest challenges that African designers face?
I'd like to launch an appeal to everyone who loves fashion living in Africa to start by wearing clothes made in Africa. I'm not telling them not to wear luxury brands, but at the same time, they also need to encourage African designers. We're trying to change African fashion, especially in Francophone Africa. Mentalities need to evolve. People need to start by wearing clothes designed and made on the continent, so that designers are able to make a decent living from their work.
And Made in Africa is a concept that comprises clothes made not only on African soil, but also in the African diaspora.
Where did this passion for Madras begin?
I realized that Madras was hardly known, despite being a wonderful representation of Caribbean culture. But it's also not just Caribbean culture. It's got a wonderfully rich history that's been nourished by travels, by colonization. Madras is a part of India, and Indian migrants to the Caribbean brought that culture with them, where it was reinterpreted, and now it really does travel all over the place. This is a Madras patchwork, which is pretty important to me because it's comprised of all these different pieces with this beautiful cotton and all of these combined threads, which is very characteristic. And for me, they also represent cultural threads. This collection is about the links between the Caribbean, India, and Paris.
Le wax, so wax fabrics aren't on the way out?
No, absolutely not. I can safely say that we're still wearing wax prints in Ivory Coast. But today, we've decided to promote woven African pani, or wrappers, namely Ivorian pani. And the work that these fabric producers come up with is really remarkable. So it was important for me to reference these artisans from Western Ivory Coast to promote woven Ivorian pani.
What are you presenting today?
The collection is called What Color Are Your Cats at Night? So it's a collection based on different shades of gray. There you go.
Because at night all cats look grey.
That's what you might think, but not always. In any case, there will be a lot of gray cats, but there will also be a fair few cats of some other colors, although not loads.
A collection on the theme of masculinity and femininity?
Yes, masculinity, femininity, but also freedom. The freedom simply to be, and the freedom to be able to say what we want through the clothes we wear. The freedom to walk with your head held high, to accept yourself, and maybe even the freedom to have a message, or to make people accept you, or at least start to accept you.
What does fashion mean for you?
For me, fashion is a means of expression. I don't know if you can see, but I have albinism. It's not always been easy for me here because I'm African, but I've got white skin. So for years, I really struggled to be myself, with how to identify. And fashion helped me to accept myself. Fashion can help us feel worthy. I've worked for different designers. Having that access to fashion, that really built up my confidence. They accepted me as I am. Often when I was doing ad campaigns or photo shoots where I was having my makeup and hair done, well, sometimes when I saw what they'd done to me, I didn't even recognize myself. And it's then that I started to accept myself, to actually find myself beautiful. That really helped me. And that's why I say that we, along with designers and stylists, really have a very important message to share. Young people are really my priority, really empowering them. It's about expressing ourselves, whether the message be one of happiness or sadness, because that's what my clothes express. And you know, most of my designs I came up with when I was unhappy. And it's true that instead of seeking remedy in drugs or cigarettes, things like that, well, I prefer to create. That's it. I create.
A recent UNESCO report says that Africa is on course to be the world's next major fashion hub, on the condition that the industry receives sufficient state support, a condition that's by no means guaranteed.
From North America to the southern tip of Patagonia, join us for a look at the latest political, economic, cultural and social news from the Americas.
Inside the Americas, presented by Jeannie Godula on France 24 and France24.com.
partout il y a du racisme, on trouvera des femmes et des hommes qui vont se lever pour dire stop à ça.
L'intégration marche parce qu'une partie de cette population réussit quand même. Mais ceux qui restent sont plus mal qu'avant.
On en vient à des pensées racialisantes et dévastatrices comme le grand remplacement.
Je pense que la xénophobie, le racisme est en progression. Mais en parallèle, il y a des droits. Les droits sont là. Arrêtez de vous abstenir. Votez.
Moi, je fais le pari quand même de la vie plus forte que les faillites du système.
40 years after the March for Equality and Against Racism on France 24 and France24.com.
You are watching France 24. It's time now for 60 Minutes Live around the world. I'm Jeannie Godula. The headlines. A new hostage exchange set to take place this Monday, the fourth and final day of a truce between Israel and Hamas. International mediators pressing to extend that ceasefire in Gaza. Fighting in Ukraine in the face of extreme winter weather, including in the southern Kherson region, where Russian attacks continue. Gulliver Cragg will tell us the very latest live from Kyiv. And as the COP28 climate summit gears up for its kickoff later this week in Dubai, we'll have the first in a series of special reports, this time focusing on the devastating effects of climate change in Uganda.
WESN.
Welcome one and all, our valued viewers here on Talking Point from local and abroad communities. Sean Michael Small here once again before you kick off the week with news that has passed over the weekend and some interesting things, of course, some of which you already know has happened. Some things to happen this week as we await the deliverance of the Commission of Inquiry. The report, we should get that at the end of the month, November 30th, I believe. As long as everything goes well, there is expected to be short hearing on the 29th, which will be 2 days from now, which I believe you could have applied to view that hearing, but it is not expected to cause any further delays. And hopefully that situation, that travesty might be reached to a point where it's closer to a close. However, given what we see in the country, just because the report is given by the chairman of the commission doesn't mean that we, the public, necessarily will be able to view the findings, read the report. So, I'm not entirely sure exactly how that will play out. If we will get it, if we won't, we await with bated breath, because I feel as though that is something that is, for the most part now, it's been shelved by our society. And, that tragedy happened, but we have tragedies now that we need to focus on. And speaking of tragedies, a tragedy occurred in the last couple of months. I wouldn't necessarily say the verdict was a tragedy, but a tragedy did occur. We witnessed it as it was happening. It was right before our eyes, and it's just that we saw the result of it last week, Friday. What am I speaking about? Well, let's start off today's Daily Review. And of course, everybody should be aware, because this happened Friday, that 18 counts of murder, 6 police officers suspected of murdering 3 people. Their murder trial reached a conclusion last week, Friday, with not guilty verdicts all around. It's not surprising. It's not surprising if you followed enough of the case, particularly with what one could argue the star witness. And I use the phrase star witness not because I don't know if the prosecution used that phrase, but when you had 7 accused or 7 suspects and you give one immunity from the entire thing, you give her immunity from the entire thing, she has to be a star witness. Because everybody faced triple murder charges, right? Hence why it's 18 charges not guilty. So you're giving her immunity in participation for what would be a triple homicide. She had to come good. And I've said that. I said that a couple weeks ago. How is it that someone whose testimony you value enough to give immunity is going to have contradicting testimony given to the DPP's office, apparently through official enough channels, a letter to the DPP that contradicts the story that she gave in the initial inquiries or the initial stages of the trial? And I'm just left to wonder, because I lamented the fact that this might undermine the whole thing, and it to some extent probably has. And I would just like to know how did this happen? Not the not guilty verdict, right? At any day, given the testimony of one of the accused versus the other accused, testimony from which she was granted immunity from charges. And I do wonder, did she hold up her end of the bargain to continue her immunity deal? I don't know. Based on that testimony, such an unreliable witness, because she contradicted herself, how do we expect a jury to pass down guilty verdicts on this situation? One of the things I do wonder, if this was a factor, right, is the fact that, as far as I'm aware, TNT only has murder. There's no murder 1, murder 2, there's no premeditated, there's no heating of the passion. No. It's murder. Whatever the circumstances are, as long as it's not something like, I believe, manslaughter, we might have that designation for, you're going to be charged for murder. There's only one charge. It is what it is. And I do wonder if, to some extent, the jury may or may not have been more willing, if there was more specific classifications allowed for the charge of murder. So, okay, maybe not murder 1, you know. It wasn't premeditated that they hunted for these 3 people and they gunned them down. But maybe some sort of charge for unlawful killing, more than just manslaughter. But could that have been tackled? I don't know what the procedures are for these sort of crimes. Every jurisdiction is different. But they had murder charges, and not enough apparently was presented to them that they could reasonably say, yes, we believe they're guilty, to murder charges. So 6 officers who were imprisoned for 11 years, I use that term lightly, loosely, not necessarily technically. 6 officers are now free. And of course, there are implications to that. More on that a little bit. But still, how did we get here? How is it that this case, they were confident, let's move forward with this case, and then it derailed so spectacularly? We're not talking about, okay, the prosecution put their side, and the defense put their side, and the jury just decided for defense. We're talking about a situation where it appears as though one of 2 things happened. Gross incompetence, because again, you're going to give one of the suspects immunity, and you're going to have her testify and say things in court that contradict a letter that she gave the office of the Director of Public Prosecutions earlier. Did you not have this letter? Was it not given to you? The defense has the letter. So do you not have an explanation to explain the contradiction facts presented in both testimonies in order to say why the letter is not valid? Because according to the letter, it does not seem as though the witness is quite so innocent. And she wrote it, right? But then according to her testimony, initially, she's afraid for her life. Well, she was afraid for her life, that's why she stopped speaking. But she was scared of the whole situation. She was a passenger. Other people were driving the whole scenario, not according to the letter. How does that work? How do you think, in what world is this a reliable witness if you're not prepared? Or was it the fact that your preparation was to have her explain, and since she's not willing to speak, your whole case gets sunk? How does this happen? Does she still have immunity? And this just brings the whole, what's the point of us asking the police to do better if you can't handle murder cases? What's the point? Chief Justice once is calling for new lawyers to improve the perception of the criminal justice system. I'll get to that later. This situation has sunk the criminal justice system. And think about what the prosecution, let's not just think about how bad this whole case plays out, right? It's very difficult to see where this was a good idea. And maybe it was at one point in time, but then, gross incompetence. Or, less likely in my opinion, but the possibility is there, was this deliberate? I have to ask. I have to ask because the situation is so ridiculous. I have a hard time believing that someone can be so incompetent. That whoever made the decision with regards to the strategy of this trial, with regards to the direction of the prosecution, the strategy of the prosecution, it is so bad, it makes it hard to believe. Well, no one is that stupid, right? That you're not going to be prepared when the defense comes up with the letter that contradicts what she said in court, right? In the preliminary inquiry, I believe it was. No one is that. So then you have to ask, well, is there the possibility that this was deliberate? Because A, in the letter, it seems as though she might have been trying to take blame for colleagues. Then her testimony was trying to throw them under the bus. Then, all of a sudden, if her immunity deal holds up and they're acquitted, like at this point, shouldn't somebody bear some kind of consequences for this? Because now we have a situation where 6 officers got a not guilty verdict. To what extent now is their 11-year detainment lawful or just or fair or ethical? And then what about, their careers, their salaries, their standing in society, their reputation? Listen, I don't have an easy time accepting the not guilty verdict like many in the population does, but at the end of the day, the standard is the standard. I've said that before, and I'll say it again. Unless they could be proven guilty, I can't say that things should be denied from them that they would have potentially have. However, I do find, once again, the Commissioner of Police, in response to this not guilty verdict, has a very interesting way to communicate. Because a statement on Friday, the Commissioner of Police said, "Incidents like these are regrettable, and I wish to emphasize the need for officers to be more proficient in the standard operating procedures. Notwithstanding the outcome of this case, for the officers' lives have been lost. In that regard, I wish to extend our condolences in regards to the families of the victims in this incident." That's nice. I don't know if the victims would necessarily, like the fact that you're basically saying, well, our officers were not proficient in standing operating procedures, and then that's what led to this tragedy where 3 people died. Not somebody got shot in the foot and somebody else was, unlawfully detained for 6 hours or overnight. No, 3 people died. I don't know if, what were the standard operating procedures for 2 men falling out of a chair or somebody being handed over to prisons and ended up dying from blunt force trauma, polytrauma. Because the standard operating procedures there. 3 people died, and that's what you're going to say? I don't know if that's enough. It once again, to me, it once again shows, well, I very much can't look favorably upon communication from the Commissioner of Police like this. There already is going to be a section of the population that is not going to accept this verdict. And then that's the excuse. They didn't know standard operating procedure. But here's the irony. Union is going to fight for their back pay, for their potentially lost promotions, etc., benefits, etc. Apparently, those 6 officers weren't able to follow standard operating procedures, and that's what got 3 people killed. Does this impact that scenario? Should it? You know, to what extent does the Commissioner understand the weight of her words? Because now she is speaking against, in my opinion, the case of the association is trying to make for 6 officers underneath her. Of course, some people would say, well, why not? They had to be guilty of something. But guilty of what? All the trial did is say that there's not enough evidence of them being guilty of murder. It doesn't really say, it doesn't make a determination or anything else. So we are where we are with regards to that. The lack of leadership from on top is just, it would be a compelling drama if it wasn't the fact that we have to live through it. Oh wait, sorry, not all of us are able to live through it. Isn't that ironic? There's more interconnectivity with stories as I go on. So moving on somewhat. You remember the story, I believe, last week, where the soldier allegedly was part of a 6-man crew wearing either police uniforms, army uniforms, or I believe plainclothes, robbed a house. The victims went to the mayoral police station, saw a man in an army uniform and said, that's one of them right there. Well, he's been released. That soldier has been released. Now, it is said that the victims failed to identify him during an identification parade. The question is it that they identified the wrong person, or is it, well, that they did so truthfully? Or is it that they either declined to identify anybody, said they don't recognize anybody, or misidentified on purpose? Because it is reported in one paper that investigators suspect that the victims fear for their safety following the whole situation. Because it's not fake soldiers. When you see the same guy, probably in the same uniform, in the police station you're going to report it to, at some point somebody probably had the thought, whoa, do I really want to go through with this? Because I'm pretty sure the response times, if I get attacked, ain't going to be instantaneous. And who can blame them? It's not as though we have successfully prosecuted law enforcement agents in crimes like this. Just look at Friday. Now, those are 2 very different things, right? But it will affect the perception of people. And let me just backtrack now, because I can understand, right? Why am I going to stick my neck out in a society that seems to be very much based upon not sticking your neck out? Think about it. Think about it. How many whistleblowers do we really have? Even the whistleblower in Tobago, they had to use a videotape of him, potentially or allegedly, without his consent. Right? Now, let me just go back to the trial just a second. Think about what the prosecution was asking from the jury. Think about it. They're asking people to convict. based on a version of events, right? And this is not to say that I think this is true. I'm just saying this is what the prosecution was asking in this case. You are setting the picture where police officers knowingly murdered 2 people to cover up the situation that led to the initial shooting or whatever. Murdered 2 people and have an unofficial policy amongst the police officers from academy of 1 squad, 1 song, which means we will cover up our misdeeds, we will not step out of line, we will all support each other to keep things covered up. For murder. For murder. The police arm, not just these 6 officers, right? That's what the testimony was. It implicates to some extent the whole police service. And then you're saying, okay, now, jury, please convict these 6 officers in the presence of their fellow officers. The witness is afraid for safety, but you all don't worry about that. You all don't worry about that. Please convict these 6 officers in the presence of many of their fellow officers. Who wants that? Granted, the evidence was horrible. How that witness testimony played out was horrible. But look at the stretch that the prosecutor is trying to ask the jury to take. Under your version of events, prosecutor, I might be at risk. So even if you are correct and even if you do have evidence, it's not like you can keep people safe. In fact, the Police Association has also called out about the witness protection program and deficiencies there. So as a jury now, why am I going to, you can't keep witnesses safe. You have people, from what I understand, regularly, they want to come up short with their testimony. They don't think that it's safe. And I don't know to what extent the jury was affected by this, but I can't see why not. Of course, I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong. I just thought it was interesting. Look at the scenario that the prosecution wants the jury to have to, buy into. And then why would they want to? There's an incentive not to. And that's where we're at. That's where we're at, where we can't potentially prosecute the bad eggs because no one seems to be willing to stick their neck out for a society that buries its head in the sand. I'm not knocking people who want to protest about what's going on in Gaza. I'm going to talk about that later on in the show. But I will say this. There's no risk to protest Gaza here. But you want to protest about corruption in Parliament? Ooh, there's risk to your job. You want to protest about gangs? Ooh, there's risks that you could be attacked in your community, especially if you're victims, if you are in close proximity to that. There's a risk there. You can't speak out. You can speak out when the police are around, but not when they're not around. You want to speak out against police brutality, against police aggression, against extrajudicial killings? There's a risk to that too. How many whistleblowers we have in this country? Remember what I said? Think about it. Think about it. We all believe there's a high degree of corruption. How much whistleblowers do we have? Not many. We know the teachers can't speak, they have a gag order. How many other workers in whichever ministries want to risk their jobs? We don't have a very good track record of actually utilizing witness testimony and whistleblowing testimony, much less keeping them safe from unfair repercussions. Because there will be times when, look, a whistleblower will have to face some amount of repercussions, and that's when it becomes, somewhat heroic. When you face the consequences knowingly, but you do it anyway because, your conscience says that you have to. But we don't have a track record to say that we could even make use of the information. So what's the point? Nobody wants to stick out and get stepped on, and worse yet, nothing comes from it. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll continue on. There's more, like I said, there's calls for restoring confidence in the justice system. I'll get to that later. Stay tuned. This is Talking About NWSL. We'll be right back.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical. Really? Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
Simon's Musical Supplies Limited. We are the specialist in new and used musical instruments, carrying top brands like Yamaha, Pearl River pianos, vinyl and Sabian cymbals, Remo and Evans drumheads and Fender guitars, just to name a few. Also a wide assortment of music books, pan and accessories. At Simon's, we service what we sell. Trust the leader. Call us now at 625-6412 or visit us at 20 Board Street, Port of Spain.
My name is Carl Media. I'm the founder and the host of Ever Increasing Voice Ministries. Join me every Saturday and Sunday on WESN, this powerful station, at 9 a.m. on Saturdays, 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. nightly. Also on Sundays, I'll be on at 7 a.m., 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. at night time. When you come here, we are getting people heavenly ready.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. And moving on to the next story, although they'll all be interconnected when I wrap things up, coming down to the end. It's been reported yesterday that arsonists hit licensing in Caroni. The office was not damaged by the fire, although there may be water damage. It was reported water damage from firefighting efforts might have happened to the building. But 14 vehicles that were impounded, those vehicles were damaged or destroyed. Now, the vehicles themselves, it seems as though it's suspected one vehicle was the target and then the fire spread to the other 13. Or that's what it appears as initially by the, I believe it is the commissioner, Transport Commissioner Clive Clark. Now these vehicles, they were basically impounded. They were part of investigations looking into corrupt practices, apparently from well, things like registration of vehicles or double registrations, tampered chassis, stolen vehicles. So, of course, it begs the question, is it that one of the target vehicle potentially had evidence of some crime or could have revealed or blown open a case and it was decided, okay, let's destroy it. Regardless, it's destruction of potential evidence within custody. Crime tends to be a trend. And it's just human nature, right? Once criminals see that you could get away with something, then they're emboldened to do it further. Not just more instances, but also to increase the scope and the scale. Destruction of evidence in, licensing office. Well, then it might go beyond that. And it's just one more sign that to what extent do we have a grip on the situation. But in this case, it almost seems as though no one necessarily thought of the possibility that this could happen. Now, to be fair, depending on the crimes that these vehicles were, the investigations they were part of, rather. Maybe people did not expect, well, arsonists are going to hit it. Now, it kind of all depends, right? The motive behind it, were they the owners of the vehicle that they just didn't want to be looked into? Were there corrupt officials that did something with the vehicle? It's not their vehicle, so they're not losing anything. It's just all gain for them. I mean, we don't know. Or could just be something else entirely. But regardless, vandalism, I mean, that's what they're trying to say. What's going on with religious sites, right? It's not hate crimes, it's just vandalism. It's just people being vandals for no reason. Violent and destructive and chaotic for no reason. Could it be that? One would think that, it's one thing to have a church or a temple that people could break into easily. It's another thing for a licensing office. I don't know. Where's the security? These days, I do feel for security guards. If you think police officers have a difficult time, police officers who are technically trained and equipped for violent confrontation, imagine being a security guard in 2023 in Trinidad and Tobago. So there's a part of me that's like, why is it that it's obvious, right? We impound vehicles, they need to be secured. Unless somebody threw Molotov cocktails over a fence, drive-by arson, I don't know. So of course that begs the question, did the arsonists have access to the vehicles in order to start the fire? Did they just throw things over a wall? Like, all of these things matter because I do wonder, again, standard operating procedures, right? What are they? Are they robust enough? Are our measures to safeguard evidence robust enough? Because it doesn't seem so. I believe I saw a report over the weekend, at the end of the day, the detection rate for crime in this country, for this year, was 18%. I believe for major crime in total, not just murders. 18%. Parenting has nothing to do with detection rate of crime. I've said that before, I'll say it again. Parenting might attribute to the crime level, to the high crime, to the severity of crime, the violence, the high degree of violence when conducting these crimes, murders with robberies, not just assassinations or robberies, but parenting have nothing to do with the 18% detection rate. All right, so all that to say to the next story. And I mentioned this earlier. The Chief Justice is calling for new attorneys to help restore the public confidence in the justice system. The ability to practice was not a right or entitlement, but a privilege. That's nice. That sounds really nice in a vacuum. The problem is, in communication, you cannot deny context. And the main context is, Mr. Chief Justice, I have to ask, what have you done to help the public confidence of the justice system? And what I find interesting is, it's remarkable that here you are, the Chief Justice, one of the leading figures in the justice system, to some extent, you're not part of law enforcement, right? But you're a stakeholder. You have some say. You have a part. Big part, small part, that could be debated. But you have a part. And you tell the new young lawyers, hey, there's a mess. There's a mess that all of us in leadership have not been able to fix. Hey, y'all solve it first now. Because what has the Chief Justice done? I know one of the things that he has not done, he has not had to complain, as far as I'm aware, about his budget and staffing levels. I could be wrong. But I do believe that, he has not necessarily supported the DPP when the DPP said, I have security concerns of a building they want to throw me in, or I'm understaffed. We have a criminal justice system where you're saying, oh, people don't have confidence in it. Then we have the Office of Public Prosecutions, of the Director of Public Prosecutions, and he's saying he's understaffed. So where are your calls to say, hey, we got to fix this staffing level? Again, it seems as though your budgetary concerns are not on the same level of issues that the DPP has. Am I wrong? The Police Service Commission there, they have a survey that's out this morning, right? It was reported in the news. You could take it from today. I actually tried to take it this morning. It wasn't available to the public yet. So I'm not too sure just when it would actually be open. It's there. You could Google it, and there's a link, but then it'll take you to our website, say click here for the survey, but the survey is not available yet. It's interesting to what extent will that actually mean anything, because the last survey didn't necessarily have good results. Have we seen anything done about it? Not really, no. No, we haven't. And it's not just the Chief Justice saying, ooh, we need to improve the criminal justice system, or at least the perception. Let me get, well, public confidence. But also one big-time contractor, Emily Elias, is calling on government and opposition to put their differences aside and come together to sort out these legislative problems with regards to crime fighting. It's interesting that he said it. This is big private sector interest now. This is not just, some political activist who wants to make a name for himself with a political career. This is someone whose words, for better or worse, carry weight. And I would think it would carry weight with the current administration. But at the end of the day, in general, dare I say that some of the people who are basically, crying wolf at this point, to what extent are they partially responsible for the situation that we find ourselves in? I mean, we have a police service now that's saying that there are questions about how many officers out of 900, how many police constables out of 900 police constables who were promoted to corporal, how many were wrongly promoted? Now, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure 900 is a significant fraction of the police service in general. And you don't just promote that many people all at once. Usually you promote people and then they take on higher responsibilities with that promotion. And if they don't have higher responsibilities to give them, right? Now, it's not quite the same as a private business, any sort of military or paramilitary organization. It's not quite the same. There are still ways where you could get promotions in certain aspects. But to some extent, yeah, I'm pretty sure you don't just promote 900. We're talking more than a tenth. I'm very much lowballing the figure here. Again, what are the standard operating procedures of promotion? Apparently, that's not, it's not just use of force that police officers don't understand. What are the standard operating procedures that at least 900 police officers being promoted, and then 2 months later, you are now looking into it? Like nobody thought, hey, this figure seems kind of large. Maybe we should look into it before we promote these guys, and then have to tell some of them, hey, we're taking it back. Can you even take it back? I don't know. I mean, somebody's leading the mule backwards in this one. Trust and confidence in the criminal justice system. We can't even get promotions, correct? And think about it. The opposition blaming the government blaming the opposition, contractors blaming the two parties, contractors who may or may not have ties to some politicians, I'm just saying. That's as far as I'll go with that one. The Chief Justice, who seems to not be as independent as he should be, seems to, maybe, it appears, it is alleged, it is believed by some. And things are so bad that now when I tell people we need to trust the police, we need to do our part, what am I supposed to say to this? From the important things like use of force in apprehending criminals to murder investigations into potential unlawful police killings to just how you promote people and carry out basic HR functions to a satisfaction survey. I mean, I don't know, but if something should be open on the 27th, I'm pretty sure 7 a.m. is on the 20th. We're 7 hours into on the 27th. I understand that it's early in the morning, but still, that's generally internationally what the standard is. That's why people line up for Black Friday sales the night before. They don't wait until 8 a.m. like good little boys and girls. So I don't know. I find the calls to rectify the situation now coming from these various quarters seem to be at the end of the day, at best late, way too late, and at worst, somewhat hypocritical. But I could be wrong about that. Okay. Switching gears, final story. And I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure how this is going to play out, but I thought it was still worth a mention. Switching gears, there is some legislation that's being put forward. I believe it's in the Senate. And basically it's called financial transparency, the financial transparency bill, right? Now, the minister is saying that we're not going to surrender our sovereignty with regards to this bill because we need to be compliant with international standards and what, you know, the big boys are telling us we need to do in order to not be blacklisted or what have you, or face whatever consequences with regards to our financial sector and banking sector. But Independent Senator Dr. Paul Richards, he has some concerns over these new regulations. So if we pass them to be compliant, it will cause more of a burden, particularly he's pointing to non-government organizations, right? And some of the requirements now for their reporting and for their paperwork and so forth, he said, well, it was onerous before when new regulations came into place. And now with this new set, he's very much concerned that it's going to make things even more difficult. And that will negatively impact with regards to the amount of NGOs we have in this country. And one of the few things that seems to be working decently are NGOs, particularly as effective safety nets for those that need help, not those that demand or want or feel entitled to help, those that need help, because they know the reality of how do we weed out the fraudsters that are trying to take what they don't deserve and to take extra and take a fair share from somebody else that should go to somebody else. Right? And that's just with regards to food and hamper distribution. And they're putting in the work and they're being efficient with their resources because they have to. It's not government that could just have a program and if it's not managed well and if the people that it's meant to actually help doesn't actually receive the resources, you know, but we gave out however many hampers, right? That's all that we care about. And part of the thing too is just, you know, the whole situation has the senator confused. I believe he laments the fact that, look, he has to read through multiple different bills because it amends multiple different bills, and he has to see now how all of those moving parts come together before he could accurately comment on this proposed piece of legislation. And he brings up the fact that, look, we are having to dance to the tune of these bigger countries when some of the worst tax havens have nothing to do with us. Some of them are European countries, some of them are big economies, including the UK, apparently. So it's something to bear watching, because I don't necessarily have faith that the government could do anything right most of the time. And our NGOs are a considerable safety net that is more efficient in the use of resources than the government. And to say that those organizations might be in danger, not just as a safety net for society, but also as a safety net for culture, to keep cultural awareness going, potentially as a safety net for certain educational needs, to help fill in the gaps that for-profit organizations and the government can't fill. And you can understand why for-profit can't do it at the end of the day. Some things, you don't do it for profit. And usually that's where you look to the government. So ultimately, the NGOs are not a safety net for all of these miscellaneous things. They are a safety net for government's inefficiency and inadequacy and incompetence. But hey, as far as I remember, I've heard that the Minister of Finance said, you know, we raised the price of gas, they didn't ride yet. Well, now we'll see how this property tax thing goes out. There's a lot of questions with regards to the valuation, by the way. I have heard that you could have a townhouse in a development where all the townhouses look the same, and your address, for all intents and purposes, is the same, and the valuations could be wildly different. Like I said, don't expect government to be able to actually do anything with any degree of proficiency. That's why the budget, that's why Minister Imbert's budget looks like a pack of random stuff that doesn't actually accomplish anything except fool people enough to keep the current administration in power. Maybe. I mean, there's an election coming up, we'll see. Let's take a break. When we come back, some minor commentary. I have a video to play from our affiliate France 24 pointing out the current status of the Israeli conflict. Stay tuned to Talking Point. We'll be right back.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Psyched. Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening.
you must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up, Doc? Every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Clearly, there's a lot of triangulation, there's a lot of intermediaries. The International Committee of the Red Cross has played an extremely decisive role, its traditional role in prisoner visiting and prisoner exchange. But of course, there's a lot of politics around all of this, and no side wants the other side to be able to claim this as a victory.
What do you think the chances are that this deal will be extended beyond the Monday night deadline?
First of all, let's keep this short-sighted to the next step. The next step, as announced by the Israeli military, is going to be the resuming of military operations just in a few hours, in a few days. And this is going to be a very significant event because the pressure has been mounting on Israel in order to broker, to sign off on this deal. Israel has done this very reluctantly until now. We can say that more pressure has been building up in the past days. During the truce, it will be more difficult for Israel to continue carrying out its military operations plans.
And when the truce comes to an end, Israel's been clear it will resume its war against Hamas in Gaza. What do you think militarily its priority will be once that happens?
It's very difficult to know what is going to happen, but what I believe is that the type of military operation that we have seen these past few days and weeks is going to change. And it's going to change essentially because the international community will not be as lenient and as understanding with regards to large-scale aggression and bombing or displacement of populations. So this is one reason for change. The other reason for change is that we can be pretty sure that Israeli intelligence gathering services have been really hard at work during the truce in order to track where these prisoners have come from, who has been taking care of these people, and therefore I believe that there will be a new wave of targeted attacks that will resume very, very shortly.
Well, you talk about targeted attacks. Today, Hamas has announced that one of its top commanders in the north of Gaza has been killed. They haven't given us the information of when he was killed or indeed where he was killed. But I'm interested in to what extent you think Hamas's military wing has been degraded by the war so far, because before the truce, it was clear that rockets were still being fired towards Israel.
That's correct. If you are looking at a short-term answer, the answer is probably that a number of people of the Hamas combatant wing have been defeated, have been killed, have been put out of combat. And one can certainly say that there may be a cause for rejoice and more safety, once again, in the short term. Unfortunately, in the mid to long term, all that this massive attack has really achieved is to guarantee the recruiting services of thousands, if not tens of thousands of people to this combatant arm of the Hamas.
Well, to help us understand what's at stake for civilians caught in the crossfire, notably children, I'm joined by a UNICEF spokesperson from Gaza, James Elder. James, thanks so much for joining us in what is obviously a very stressful environment. What has the ceasefire allowed you to do differently?
Well, it's allowed us to be safe, firstly, in terms of getting aid to people. It's allowed us to get the biggest distributions of aid to the north in a month. I was there today. I've literally just come back. I can't overstate the desperation, the distress, the trauma of people there. Entire apartment blocks reduced to rubble, churches within hospitals acting as emergency wards. Those too have not been spared. So it's allowed us to act on some of that desperation for food and water, seeing children who are now gaunt and very thin. Getting medical supplies is what UNICEF took today, IV solutions, rehydration solutions, emergency kits. So it's a very good start across the base of the United Nations and all the partners, the Egyptian Red Crescent, the Palestinian Red Crescent, but it has to continue. The destruction of Gaza and the mass killing of children is not going to bring peace and safety. We need this kind of aid day after day after day. Such is the enormity of devastation across Gaza.
And what do you find is the most difficult challenge that your organization is facing in terms of getting that to the north?
Time right now. The last few days have been very successful. So now it's about time. We need this pause to continue. It strikes me as I'm perplexed by the idea that we can have a pause for a few days so we can see how desperate people are who've seen their homes destroyed, who can't provide safety or water or food for their families. And just as we start to reach them, we get in a day or two's time, and again we start to see the bombardment and burning of children. I'm sorry to be so graphic. I've spent a lot of time in hospitals. I'm constantly seeing children with the most graphic wounds of war. So the response is getting to be how it should be, but it simply has to continue into next week. We need a lasting peace, or we are just going to see more devastation and more deaths of children.
And I mean, that flows from something that your organization recently said. It said that Gaza was the most dangerous place in the world to be a child. What is exactly the unique challenge in this particular conflict that is facing children?
I think they're under multiple threats. One, of course, is we've seen the reports now of more than 6,000 children killed. Now, I mean, I've seen these children. I was on a bus yesterday that came down from Shifa Hospital in the north, and children with limbs cut off have spent 4 days in a bus, and with terrible burns. The bus smelt of decomposing flesh. That reality has been across Gaza for thousands and thousands of children. At the same time, you've had such a denial of access to water and to food that we risk now disease outbreaks and so on. So we're seeing children getting very, very sick. Those are the two major areas, both getting sick because they're denied aid and what the bombardments have done. Now we're getting that life-saving aid to people, but we cannot see a resumption of attacks. I sat just yesterday with a little boy, Omar, and he was a really bright, sparky child. He was 7, and he'd lost his mum, his dad had been killed, and his twin brother had been killed, but he was still able to speak with me, gently, but speak. And I said to him, Omar, you're clearly a clever boy. And he just responded, well, my brother was more clever. And as he spoke to me, he kept closing his eyes. And I asked his auntie, why does he do that? And she just said, he's so terrified that he's going to forget what his mum and dad look like. So he keeps closing his eyes because he doesn't want to lose them in his memory in the same way he's lost them in real life. That story is across Gaza. I have barely met someone who's not lost a loved one. So the aid is good. The aid is getting to where it needs to go, but we cannot turn this off in 2 days' time and return to the bombardment of children.
Interesting that we are not unique when it comes to questioning the capacity of our leaders and their ability and their judgment in situations, particularly in complex situations. And some people might say, oh, well, Israel knows what they're doing and this is exactly what they want. And I would say no. I would say no, they don't. I would say they know what they would like to achieve, the end result, but how is where it gets murky. And in the past, for the last 30 years, America has been involved in different peacekeeping and anti-terrorism actions, right? And what tends to happen is they take their military and ask them to do things that they're not trained for, not prepared for, not equipped for. And then in America's case, rules of engagement, the policies, prevents the soldiers from using overwhelming firepower to deal with any threats. Because you have to be concerned with civilians caught in the crossfire. Doesn't always work out that way, right? But that's what the policy is, that's what it's supposed to be. And generally, that's why what we're seeing now in Israel, that's not what happened in Iraq. As much as people might want to say different. No. This is a different level of violence. And the difference between those peacekeeping efforts and other peacekeeping efforts that failed. Just look at the situation in Somalia in the 90s. A UN peacekeeping force went there to try to deal with a humanitarian crisis, and for the most part, they were not able to really solve the problem. They didn't know what they were doing. Israel is now taking a different approach. They're saying, let's go heavy-handed. We value our soldiers' lives more than the civilian population that is in and around our targets. But what are you accomplishing? As the first interview in the clip pointed out, you're just guaranteeing recruitment levels to the organization you're trying to defeat. Good luck with that. And it's not a state military that you could obviously identify, track, and destroy. It's a paramilitary group that does have some sort of legitimacy in its unethical holding of the political leadership of the region. But they can disappear amongst the population and use unethical practices. They're not conforming to the Geneva Convention. And you're attacking them with a military who, ironically, is also probably not conforming to the Geneva Conventions. But you're attacking them, it's like the only tool Israel has is a hammer. And rather than trying to figure out how do we get another tool in order to more efficiently deal with this problem, they're just going to hammer everything down. We need to glue two pieces of wood together. We have no glue. We just have a hammer. Let's hammer them together. We need to screw in a screw. We don't have a screwdriver. We have a hammer. Let's hammer the screw in. We need to cut some plywood. We just have a hammer. Let's hammer the excess plywood off and hope that it's in a straight line. That's all they have, a hammer. That's what the IDF is. Both situations, and what tends to happen around the world is that civilian leadership doesn't understand enough, no matter how experienced they are, about what a military can or cannot do, what it's appropriate for it to do, what makes sense for it to do, how could it be effective or not effective. Usually wars are fought away from civilian populations, especially in modern times. Well, yes and no, right? That was the expectation in the Cold War with the Soviet Union coming through the Fulda Gap. But this is different. The sort of insurgency war is different. And now we are left with I don't know if I could say avoidable crisis. But it's left in a situation that has captured the world's attention. It could potentially set a bad example for other people around the world on what is permissible or not. It will draw a lot of international resources. If we have another international crisis, I don't know how well we would manage. It's what it is. But as I said, in opening of my comments, it's somewhat interesting. Dare I say, I don't even want to say a silver lining. It's not really a silver lining, but it's not unique to us. It's not unique to us that our politicians don't understand how to utilize the tools and measures available to them to deal with complex problems. So the proverbial Israeli hammer of the IDF, well, for our hammer, it's the oil money. We have oil money. Let's just throw money at it. Let's throw money at it. Corruption, that's okay. Just throw more money to try to compensate for the corruption. Inefficiency of resources, okay, let's throw more money to try and compensate for the inefficiency of how the resources are spent. Let's not solve the inefficiency. Let's not solve the corruption. Let's not try to do better. Let's just throw money. Oh, we run out of money? What do? We need to find more gas so we can get more money. Let's not try and actually find long-term solutions. Let's go short-term solutions. What happens when that, okay, say we get dragon gas. What happens when that runs out? The flip side is, don't think that what's happening in Israel, you know, we cannot see some version of it here. The level of disregard, disrespect. I mean, I'm sure that's what a lot of you feel from the Israeli president when he speaks, right? About defending Israel, blah, 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 blah. What about how our own politicians come across when they act all defensive and argumentative with reporters and people who criticize them? Yeah, we might not have bombings from airstrikes, but, you know, we have fire bombings and licensed officers, and we have people gunned down 50 odd rounds of 5.56 ammunition from an automatic rifle. That's violent enough, don't you think? Don't you think? Children are in there, children are in here. What are we going to do about it? I think it's safe to say, and this might be a bit premature of an assumption, but I think it's safe to say that right now, the way how our leadership is, we ain't going to solve the crime problem. Like, it's just not going to happen. Unless something significantly changes. And I'm not talking about swapping out Fitzgerald Hines with somebody else. One minister does not this entire mountain of a problem make. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll open the phone line. Stay tuned.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the right and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Welcome back, folks. And now is the time we open the phone lines. No ASP Ali today, but we do have another media ambassador from the TTPS going to join us tomorrow. But with that said, we're still gonna want to hear from you, the viewers, on anything that you would like to talk about. It could be a topic that I brought up, or it could be something else maybe that I missed. There's always quite a lot of news coming from the weekend. Of course, the power situation over Saturday night into Sunday, I still don't understand why they had to do it at nighttime. I guess maybe the assumption is a lot of lights would be off by then, but a lot of ACs probably would have been on. But that seemed to have happened without too many hitches, I guess you could say. At least kudos to them for warning us in advance, as opposed to what tends to happen. Yeah, there might be a published statement in advance that we're not really aware of, and then something goes wrong and they have to publish, well, this is why it happened, blah, 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 blah. But kudos to those efforts, and if only things could be as smooth as that. Of course, was it the IPP that, you know, did that work as opposed to a relevant government body. We have our first call from Diego Martin. Good morning, caller. You on there?
Good morning, Sean, and to all your listeners. Sean, I'm going to go back to one of the topics you're speaking about, and that has to do with the verdict with the 6 policemen. And I'm going to make a statement that might be controversial, but I have to say it, because we're trying to fix the police service for the longest while, and we have failed. Having said that, recently the Police Service Commission said 8% confidence. That is basically 0. Now, if the verdict had gone any side, it would have been the same thing. So we have to come to terms with it and say the police service, the TTPS, is on its last limb. And if we don't acknowledge that, we could never fix it. I think in terms of all the organization, the judiciary, etc., the police has to function professionally with integrity. Now, let me tell you why I believe the police service has collapsed. Yesterday on the newspaper, they're talking about promotion, right? There's a whole new fiasco about corporals, wrong one, and a merit list, They're talking about a merit list that has been tampered with. We had, for the leadership, a merit list has been tampered with. Let us look at the history of the police service within the last couple of years with respect to trying to transform it. We had Watsky. He was here for 2 years.
And Gibbs, yeah.
And they run him. You know who run him? His same officers. And stick a pin with his officers. You remember the day of policing? Those same officers who is responsible for the day of policing, none of them has been basically disciplined. If you check the leadership of that organization for the days of policing, all of them has been promoted to very high state levels or to senior police right now. So right now, the majority of the leadership of the police service, to me, is compromised. They were selected, and it was not based on meritocracy. For example, I'm going to tell you the leadership of why the policing people. I'll show you where they have gone to. One is a TV host now. He's a senior superintendent. One is a temporary senator. He is now the chairman of the TV host. One of them applied for the commissioner of police. He accepted responsibility on a disciplinary charge. He do that just because he wanted to get promotion. So that is why I'm saying the human resources of the police service is compromised. And without their attachment, a group of people within Trinidad and Tobago and within the police service has taken over the real police service. Where the police is or want to go, they are determined it. And we have to understand where they wanted to go, because everything seems to be dependent on how the intelligence, the investigative skills. Let me go back to the 6 police who was freed. I'm not questioning it. They say it went through the process. But let us look at the prosecution side of it. Because they brought in a special prosecutor from outside to prosecute this, giving it the semblance of, hey, we're getting this thing right. What has happened? He failed. Why did he fail? Did he fail because competency, or did he fail because the intelligence gathering and the evidence was not there? Look, for example, the immunity. How can you give an immunity to somebody and then they refuse to go into the box to cross-examination? That will remind me of Nelson Gate, you know. You should have had in that clause, if you are not being willing to cross-examine them, the status remain, you will be prosecuted. Let me go back to the prosecutor. The prosecutor is a very popular person, you know, a very popular senior counsel, Paria, and Mark Nicker's attorney. And I'm saying no more. So I am saying that case to me might have been designed to basically give you that. Because anyway it go, you still will have gotten no improvement in the confidence of the police from the citizenry. I'll go and have a nice morning.
Thank you, caller. A lot to chew on there. I think the thing is, if there was no evidence, then it should not have been taken to trial. They should not have prosecuted them if you were so devoid of evidence. And if all the evidence you had was this witness, who I agree with you. I want to know what is the penalty for her taking an immunity deal and then not answering questions. That kind of, something seems to be wrong there, right? You have a deal, you have to hold up your end to the deal to get the benefits of the deal. So I don't know if she still has immunity. I don't know, right? But I think what you said there about the HR of the police and the senior leadership, I've reached the point where, listen, this is not a clerk in some ministry where you do paperwork, right? Where you do the job good enough, it's fine. This is senior leadership of a paramilitary organization meant to combat violent crime. Not just crime, but also violent crime. One of the few state-appointed agencies that could lawfully use force and violence against the citizens of this country. Right? The state has the monopoly on violence, and they are the actual implementers, the actual users of violence when necessary. This is a heavy responsibility, and I feel as though too often when it comes into HR and labor, the TTPS is viewed like just another job. How? Not just the TTPS, sorry, but also to some extent prisons, fire service, etc., etc. Now, granted, if you're discriminating in the workplace, that's different, right? Fine. That is more or less across the board. You could treat it like any other job. There shouldn't be discrimination in the workplace. But I ain't get a promotion. I'm supposed to get promoted. Why are you supposed to get promoted? Just because you're there for however many years? And the caller has basically said his opinion, I'm paraphrasing, that a lot of the senior leadership was not placed there based on meritocracy. I can't fault that. I have no good counter argument to that claim. And I would hazard a guess that we would be better off if a significant amount of the people at the very top of the police service were removed. Now the question is who you replace them with. I do believe that at some point, if you go down the ladder, that eventually, if how promotions are handled in the service were improved, that eventually the cream will rise to the top. But the question is, how do you set up a system that will allow meritocracy to flourish in the police service? Because again, this is not an office job, right? 90% of the police officers are not supposed to be making copies and manning a desk. When I heard the commissioner's comments, I'm sorry, but to me it sounded like if this is a career desk rider, right? She knows how to ride a desk, how to do paperwork, how to do administration. That's what it sounds like. It doesn't sound like she knows how to lead people. It doesn't sound like she knows what it means to be on the streets when the rubber hits the road, when the bullets are flying and people's lives on the line based on your decision. Because at the end of the day, the 3 people who died, their lives were on the line based on the decision of the officers at the scene. And we see the result. Did it have to happen this way? I don't even know if we got a clear enough definitive answer that the shooting was 100% justified. Maybe we'll never get that, right? Maybe there's a lot of gray there and there's a lot of things we will never know. How is it though? How is it that we have yet to have one instance of body camera footage in any sort of relevant or significant case? I understand there are not enough cameras, but wait. Procedural issues, not enough charges, not enough. We're not talking about how, the cameras don't work, it's a bad. We're not talking about some practical issue. If you have procedures to use the cameras, I don't know, you're the police service. Who writes those procedures? Get somebody to write the procedures. Does it have to come from the Service Commission? Does it come from senior police leadership? Somebody do something. It's been months, years. Again, for a service that has poor public confidence in how they exercise their duties and use force against citizens of this country, I find it very interesting that there isn't much more of a front burner, much more urgency with the deployment of body cameras as widespread as possible in order to ensure that their methods and procedures and actions are hopefully beyond reproach. Evidence that could prove you innocent in 2023, I would think as a police officer, I would welcome that. How much is there that potentially needs to be hidden? I mean, we see, if you go online, you will see a lot of videos with people videotaping officers who don't want to be videotaped. I know of a situation here in TNT years ago, long time ago. Some airport authority officer doesn't want to be videotaped, while in the process of potentially bullying a young minor, just driving past the airport in a scooter or something like that in Tobago. Like, okay, if he didn't know, give him a warning. If he does it again and again, driving past. Not like driving recklessly or anything like that, huh? Calling him off into an office for what? I don't even know if he actually broke any traffic laws. I say minor, a young person, because I'm pretty sure whatever he was driving legally. Young is relative. So, Kola, I understand what you're saying. And I think, can it be fixed? I don't think it's beyond fixing. But you're right in the sense of, look, Gibson and Watsky was run. I don't know if all the officers wanted to run them, but it seemed as though there were those that did. And potentially also, I do wonder to what extent the political element. And the political element is not limited to one party, folks. It could be both parties. Are we serious about this or not? I don't know. I don't get our sense anymore. It's almost like if we all just have our heads in the sand and we've given up. Should I give up myself? Am I pissing in the wind, as the professor from Chagonas likes to say? We have our next caller from San Fernando. Good morning, caller. You're on here. Caller, morning.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
Let me just comment quickly on that. When the other caller talked about Gibbs and Iwatsky, as we're here, to tell you where I keep saying that we live in a society that is inherently corrupt. And one of the issues with Gibbs and Iwatsky was that I remember when a police officer had pulled aside the head of the Police Service Commission which was Nizam Mohammed, a former speaker. And he picked up the phone because he was speaking on his cell phone and was pulled over on, I think it was Abercrombie Street, corner Abercrombie and Independence Square. And he called Iwatsky because he felt that he should not be pulled aside or ticketed for speaking on his cell phone. So that's to tell you, the head of the Police Service Commission breaking the law, and then on top of breaking the law, want to get away from the charge. And this is the situation in the society, you know, Sean. It is so, it's like, it seems as if we in a, okay, you understand the theory of a black hole, right? But
yeah.
You're going to it. But there's up to now, no scientist can come up with a theory of how to come out of the black hole. I think this is where we are. I think Trinidad and Tobago is at a point where we're in this black hole. And it is so daunting to come, to listen every day, to read the newspaper, and to see what is going on in the society. I have listened to, yesterday I went to the market. And I had a couple of conversations with different people. Because the market, on a Sunday, market is also a social event. So people were speaking, Sean, and other people have children that are abroad. And no one wants their children, out of the conversation that I had with different people. Nobody seems to want their children to come back to this country, you know. Nobody. And that, I left there with serious sadness, you know, Sean. Serious sadness. That we have a society where we, the adults, see no hope in the future. That we don't want our children to participate in the future of this country. It was so sad yesterday for me when I left that place to understand where we reach as a society. And I could understand the frustration and where you sit as a young person, trying to look at on the brighter side, and sit there every day and have hope. Because I am one of those, Sean, that I'm an optimist, but I can tell you my hope is dwindling. Have a good day, Sean.
Thank you, caller. It's somewhat ironic to say thank you for the call. Obviously, it's not a happy spin on things. You know, there's a part of me that wishes you could have come at me with, you're wrong, Sean, you're wrong, and here's why. And it's not that bad, and, you know. And you know what? Here's the irony, right? Here's the irony, I think. You might be able to appreciate this, right? And it goes back to what you were talking about with the former head of the Police Service Commission wanting to get out of his charge for driving while talking on his cell phone. They want to lament on how things are bad and how this is bad and get rid of corruption and clean things up. Just don't mess with me. Leave me to break the law. And it's like, no. I don't always need to be right. I don't always need to be beyond reproach. There are times when, look, if I'm wrong, that's good news, right? Let me be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm not right on some of these things. But experience is not bearing that out. We have our last caller from Shogunas. Good morning, caller. You on the air?
Good day, Sean.
Morning.
I don't know why you're picking on the police again, but everything in government operates like that. And with the police, I have repeatedly proven to you what is the problem with them. They do not enforce the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. And they find every excuse not to do it. As regards this business in Palestine, you go back in history, you will see all sorts of reasons for that. But the recent thing is when Hamas entered Israel and kidnapped civilians. I would never have had this ceasefire, but Hamas unless they had released all the non-military hostages. Because by doing this, next time they're ready, they just go and grab some more civilians again, and you're not solving the problem.
Yeah.
Any question?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for that. Yes, I think, listen, I will say this. I have no issue saying this, that I disagree with how Israel is doing what they're doing. Do I disagree with what they're doing? In its core basic tenet, no, because they were attacked first. But how you do it is a problem. But I think what happens is people kind of forget, just because Israel is doing something, so to go to the professor's point, I don't disagree for them to actually defend themselves. But that doesn't mean that Hamas is innocent. Palestinians are innocent, for the most part, in a general sense. That doesn't mean Hamas is innocent, right? A bigger fault does not make a relatively smaller fault innocent. One thing though, Professor, what I find very odd is the fact that the hostages survived and are being released. And it's a weird thing, because I found Israel was so gung-ho in the attacks. It was almost like if they didn't care about the lives of the hostages. And the Palestinians didn't seem to think, oh, well, we have hostages, we just kill people, but we're going to keep these ones alive for prison exchange. I find the whole thing very odd, to be honest. How brutal it could be in some cases, and then how controlled and carefully considered it could be in other cases. It doesn't make much sense. But to your point, we're not enforcing all our laws. It goes back to what Mr. Sanfana was saying. And I think the key thing here, the key takeaway is that you're right. It is not just the police service, right? It is pervasive in every aspect of society. The level of corruption, the level of unaccountability. And we have now reached the point where, look, the number 4 student in TNT in Cape wants more to be done for tourism. And I understand her sentiments, and I appreciate it, and I hope that she succeeds, and she might be a leading figure in tourism that could help propel our tourism sector to new heights that we have never before dreamed of with her hard work and her dedication. But to some extent, she's a young person that doesn't understand that there are a lot of challenges with regards to how the government operates, how crime is affecting us, and even how some of the operators, some of the stakeholders in the tourism industry are selfishly undermining the rest of the industry and, in a way, themselves, as they cause the sum of all of the parts, the whole, to be reduced because of whatever self-centered, ambitious reasons or motivations they have to make certain decisions. There's a lot that needs to be done there. And that's just one sector. That's just one sector where the ugliness of humanity, which every society has to some degree, right? We have the propensity for it, but to what extent will we strive to do better? It's not about being perfect. It's not about even being great or good. It's about trying to be better. Even if the starting point is low, we try to do better. And then if we achieve better, we try to do even better, to keep moving forward. But it seems as though if it's not perfect, we don't want to hear about it. We don't want to put any work to actually get things done in a right way. We're too busy with our own lives. And here's the last thing I'm going to say. The last thing I'm going to say is this: to all of the young professionals who are successful, who have great lives, who think they're untouched by crime, who lament, oh my gosh, you see those people that got gunned down over there, somewhere far away from me. If this continues to happen, don't be surprised when society crumbles underneath you and all around you, and the businesses and the investments and the properties and everything that you invested in, right? All of a sudden the value turns to nothing. Don't be surprised. Don't lament the fact after when you can't do anything about it. Try and do something about it now. That's one of the things that I have to think about. All the hard work that my family members and my extended family members have done with their small businesses, with their investments, with their properties, trying to build something for themselves and for their children and for their children's children. All of that could go up in smoke. I already have family members who have lost a lot. A lot. I don't want to see that happen again. And I don't want to see that because society's excesses can't be reined in and kept under control. Just so that we could have basic things like a reduced crime level and not so many people murdered on a daily basis. And some sort of confidence that if people break the law, they will actually be held accountable. And we don't just have the perception of widespread corruption and wastage of government money that now has to be compensated. We run out of oil money. What's our hammer? Money. We run out of oil money. Well, now you're going to get property tax in your skin. Today is a good day to have a good day. As my coach always says, we can make it if we try, but we have to start today. Don't wait for tomorrow, folks. But we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.